Chapter 559. Pei County. It was night and the lights were out. Looking down from the window of Shui Rui's room on the second floor, one could see the entire backyard. The guards released the chef, Niu Er, who had caused trouble during the day, but confiscated his kitchen knife and gave him a warning. Yu Shu stood by the window without lighting the lamp to ensure that the people outside could not see inside. She waited until the burly chef walked into the small room next to the kitchen with his head down. When the door was closed, she whispered, "Is this the person who killed Censor Zhou Darren?" "Yes, it's him." Shui Rui stood behind Yu Shu. The two of them watched the chef's performance in the dark. "Then he's Prince Ning's man," Yu Shu muttered to herself and asked curiously, "How did this person cut off Zhou Darren's head under the eyes of the guards?" The room was dark, but she was not afraid at all when she asked about the dead person. Shui Rui did not know whether he should praise her for being brave or not. "Come here and we'll talk." Shui Rui closed the window with one hand and gently pulled her sleeve with the other, leading her away from the window. The moonlight was blocked out by the window, making the room even darker. Yu Shu could not see clearly and instinctively grabbed his arm. Shui Rui noticed and slowed down his steps. He led her to the table and helped her sit down first. Then he sat next to her and held her hand, not letting go. "Niu Er will be peeping downstairs later. We won't light the lamp. Shu, you're not afraid of the dark, right?" Yu Shu shook her head and then realized that Shui Rui could not see. She said softly, "I'm not afraid. Big brother, tell me, how did Zhou Darren die?" Because Shui Rui practiced martial arts, his hearing and eyes were sharper than an ordinary person's. Hence, he could see Yu Shu's face in the dark. Even though it was only a silhouette, he felt extremely at ease with her by his side. He was extremely confident, and it also became 120%. That night, Zhou Qing stayed in this restaurant. According to the guards who accompanied him, he went back to his room after dinner and never came out again. The lights in his room only went out at midnight. Only one guard stayed in the corridor to keep watch. He went to the toilet around the fourth watch, and it was at this time that the murderer found the perfect opportunity to kill him. Zhou Qing's itinerary had been kept a secret. Who would have thought that someone would dare to kill an imperial envoy so close to the capital? It was inevitable that they would let their guard down. The night guard had only been gone for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. According to the testimony of the guests on the same floor, no one heard any screams for help that night. Clearly, Zhou Qing had lost his head in his sleep. To be able to sneak into Zhou Qing's room in such a short time and deliver a fatal blow, chopping off his head, the murderer could only be a martial artist with extremely strong arms. Shui Rui was afraid that Yu Shu would feel uncomfortable, so he did not go into detail about the circumstances of Zhou Qing's death. The next morning, the guards found him dead in his room. Zhou Qing's headless body was wrapped in a thick quilt and stuffed under the bed. Brown-red human blood had soaked the quilt, and after it dried, it could not be removed. At first, I thought that the murderer would escape after the murder. I didn't expect him to be so bold as to stay in the restaurant. But after the autopsy, I found another detail in the room. What was it? She did not know if it was because the surroundings were too dark, but when Yu Shu listened to Shui Rui's story, she actually felt a little nervous. A chill ran down her spine. It was as if Zhou Qing's wronged spirit was still lingering in the restaurant, staring at them from a place they could not see, waiting for someone to avenge him. Fortunately, she was not afraid when she heard Shui Rui's voice. The quilt wrapped around Zhou Qing's body was taken from the bottom of the cabinet in the room. The cabinets in the restaurant are usually sprinkled with camphor powder to prevent insects from eating them. But there were 2 bean elephants buried under the cabinet. They are small insects that like the smell of oil and they have very sensitive noses. Zhou Qing's room was always clean and tidy, not to mention it was summer. No one would touch the thick quilt under the cabinet for no reason. So it could only be that the murderer left some traces when he was covering up the body, and that attracted these insects. I think it's impossible for an assassin to kill people with greasy hands after eating alcohol and meat. Then it's very likely that the killer is inseparable from grease, and he has another identity to conceal himself so that it's convenient for him to commit the crime. So I began to suspect the chef of this restaurant, Niu Er. I went to the kitchen to take a look. The cutting board he used had a smooth and deep cut, which could not have been made with age. But the wood of the board was new, and it had been used for a month at most. So I knew that Niu Er was a martial artist and he was used to using knives. His arm strength was very strong. As mentioned earlier, Zhou Qing's head was missing. I sent people to search around the restaurant, but they did not find it. Since the murderer was still in the restaurant, Zhou Qing's head must not be far away. So I ordered the guards to lock up the manager and the waiters of the restaurant, and then went to the kitchen cellar to search. Sure enough, I found the head in a pickle jar in the cellar. Yushu sucked in a breath of cold air. Her stomach felt sour, and she thought to herself that when she went to other restaurants in the future, she would not dare to eat pickled or soaked food. If that's the case, why didn't you arrest him then? Yushu could not figure out how Shui Rui found out that the murder was a trap, and why he did not solve the case immediately. If it were her, she would have reported the results a long time ago. She would not be as cunning as him. Shui Rui gently held Yushu's hand and said in a low voice, "At that time, I thought it was all too coincidental. At the time, I thought it was all too much of a coincidence. Zhou Qing happened to be staying in Pei County, and he happened to be staying in this restaurant. Coincidentally, there was a chef in the restaurant who was an assassin. Coincidentally, I found the bug in the wardrobe. Everything seemed to have been meticulously planned. The case was solved too easily, so I thought something was wrong." When it came to solving cases, Shui Rui followed a sequence. Unlike other judges, he first believed in his intuition, and then looked for evidence. He would not be swayed by evidence and affect his judgment. This habit had helped him solve several cases that gave the Supreme Court headaches. This time it also helped him avoid falling into a trap. "Now that you mention it, it's true." Yushu muttered, "How did Prince Ning know that Zhou Qing would stay in Pei County and arrange for an assassin in advance? Didn't you say that the chef had been working here for a few months? Then he couldn't have hired him at the last minute. But it was only half a month ago when His Majesty ordered Zhou Qing to go to Guangdong, and then he left." Shui Rui answered her doubts. "This is the best restaurant in Pei County. Any officials from the capital who pass by here will definitely choose this place to stay. I asked the guards who accompanied Zhou Qing. They ran into some trouble when they left the city, so their journey was delayed and they spent the night in Pei County. As for that Niu heir, don't underestimate Prince Ning. He has been plotting in the dark all these years, and even our Shui residence has his eyes. Niu heir is just a chess piece he planted in advance, and it's just the right time to use him." Hearing this, Yushu could not help but sigh. Lu Hao's scheming was indeed beyond her imagination. Chapter 560. Yushu and Shui Rui sat together in the dark, talking about Ning Wang's plan and Zhou Qing's tragic death. "Fortunately, you were cautious. Otherwise, if you fell into his trap, you would have offended an entire sect of enemies." Yushu herself broke out in cold sweat for Shui Rui, and she felt fortunate that he didn't step on a landmine. "But this way we can't catch the murderer, Niu heir." She frowned and couldn't figure it out. "You said this afternoon that you would beat him at his own game. You haven't told me what it is." Shui Rui only told her that there was a way to make Ning Wang stumble. No matter how she thought about it, she still could not think of a way that could satisfy both sides. Under this completely passive situation, she could turn the tables on Ning Wang. Not to mention that they couldn't touch the killer disguised as a cook. Even if they caught him and tortured him, he might not be willing to expose Ning Wang. He would definitely blame the 11th prince. If they couldn't even solve the case, how could they defeat the enemy? Shui Rui smiled in the dark. Yushu couldn't see the confidence on his face, so she shook his arm and urged him to elaborate. "In fact, it's easy. Ning Wang and I have been friends since childhood. He believes in my intelligence and I believe in his." Lu Hao believed that he could solve the case with just a few clues. Shui Rui also believed that Lu Hao had already received the news that Yushu had come to Pei County. "There are spies from Ning Wang Mansion outside this restaurant. You came at dawn and he should have received the news by evening at the latest. When he knows that you are here, he will definitely think that I asked you to use the art of death to divine the cause of Zhou Qing's death." Shui Rui laughed coldly. "Prince Ning is a person who is suspicious by nature. He doesn't know exactly how far you can go in your deductions, but he will definitely plan for the worst, which is that you and I already know that he was the mastermind behind Zhou Qing's death. These days I've been keeping the restaurant under surveillance. Although Niu heir can't send the news out, the spies outside have reported it to Prince Ning. It will also arouse his suspicions, and he will conclude that I have already seen through his scheme, which is why I haven't caught him yet." Hearing this, Yushu felt that it was her fault. "It's all my fault. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have come all the way here. I would have written down what you wanted me to do on a piece of paper and asked Hadaku to bring it to you." So, she didn't expect that once she showed up, Shui Rui would be exposed in front of Ning Wang. "No, you should have come." Shui Rui held her slightly cold fingers. There was a hint of a smile in his deep voice. "If you didn't come, how would I know you care about me?" He didn't feel that Yushu's arrival was unnecessary. Compared to her heart being seen through by Lu Hao, it wasn't even worth a mention. Yushu knew that he was subtly comforting her, but hearing him reveal his thoughts, he also saw through her. Her face blushed slightly in the darkness. She bit her lip. Fortunately he couldn't see. She patted the back of his hand and pretended to be serious. She said, "Be serious, don't talk about these useless things. Tell me, Ning Wang has already seen through you. What should we do now?" Shui Rui's dark eyes glowed faintly in the night. He remembered the rare expression she showed in his heart. He tightened his grip on her slender and soft hand. "Don't worry, I'm not that easy to control." Lu Hao was shrewd and ruthless, but he, Shui Qingbai, wasn't a pushover either. Ning Wang has grasped the situation on our side and knows that I am stalling for time. He must think that I am using silence to wait for the emperor to send someone else to take over this case. This is the first path that I told you about during the day. Since Ning Wang has laid out this plan, of course he won't just watch me jump out. So he will definitely make another move to force me to submit. Lu Hao was a very smart person, but he had a very fatal weakness that few people knew about. That was conceit. He was too conceited and didn't allow failure. He never thought that anyone could be smarter than him. He liked to play everyone in the palm of his hand. He always looked at everyone around him with a condescending gaze. His eyes were at the top of his head and he looked down on everyone. Shui Rui was the first person to discover this weakness of his. "Force you to submit?" Yushu mumbled. "You mean he has a way to force you to make a move against Niu Air?" Shui Rui said, "Yes, he has a way." "What way?" "First, he will let the spy outside the restaurant find a way to pass the order to the killer Niu Air in the restaurant." Shui Rui's eyes flashed. Fortunately, Yushu couldn't see it. "Then, Niu Air will wait for an opportunity to kill me." Yushu was shocked to hear this. She thought for a moment and understood what Shui Rui meant. Niu Air couldn't run to Shui Rui and tell him, "I am the murderer who killed Zhou Qin, please arrest me." So if Shui Rui didn't do anything to him, he couldn't frame Lu Yi. But once he committed a crime again, Shui Rui would have no choice but to resign himself to death. Could it be that if Niu Air wanted to slash him with a knife and was caught red-handed, Shui Rui would have to pat him on the shoulder with a smile and tell the group of guards outside that it was a misunderstanding? In this way I can't pretend to be deaf and dumb anymore. I must arrest him and interrogate him. After a little questioning, he will take the opportunity to confess Lu Yi. In all likelihood, he also has forged evidence such as Lu Yi's official seal. At that time, the 11th prince will not be able to clear his name even if he jumps into the Yellow River. I am bound to become enemies with the entire Liu family and concubine Lu. However, by doing this, he gives us an opportunity. What opportunity? An opportunity to silence him. Shui Rui's tone was suddenly cold. Yushu licked her lips and her throat felt slightly dry. Shui Rui had explained it so clearly, so how could she not understand? He was trying to gain the initiative after striking, and cut off King Ning's escape route. I will arrange people in advance. Once he takes action, it will be like catching a turtle in a jar. I will pretend to make a mistake and take advantage of the chaos to kill him on the spot, so that he won't have a chance to say a word. Then it will be a tooth for a tooth. When two armies confronted each other, the enemy was strong, so they had to win by surprise. Lu Hao knew that he would retreat in order to advance, but he didn't think that he would dare to overpower his superior. Shui Rui wanted to take advantage of his conceit and kill him by surprise. Shui Rui had always disdained to use immoral methods like framing and shifting the blame onto others, and he didn't tell Yushu that he actually still had a trump card up his sleeve. As for whether he would use it on Lu Hao this time, it would depend on Lu Hao's choice. Shui Rui's eyes fell on Yushu's face. He thought to himself, if Lu Hao just came for me, I just want to protect myself. If he has other killing intentions, don't blame me for being unscrupulous. A tooth for a tooth? Yushu sat up straight. She lowered her voice and asked, how are you going to do that? She didn't know why, but when she heard Shui Rui's careful response, she still felt a little uneasy. This feeling. It was as if he hid something from her. You will know when the time comes. Shui Rui kept her in suspense. Yushu didn't have the habit of getting to the bottom of things. She hesitated for a moment and gave up asking. But she was still worried. Will you be in any danger? Didn't you say that Niu Air is a master? What if he hurt you? Is Big Brother so useless in your eyes? Shui Rui asked with a smile. He held her hand and pulled it in front of him. He lowered his head and kissed the back of her hand. He said softly, don't worry. Niu Air practices external martial arts. He only has brute force. I can handle it. Of course, his martial arts was not as good as that of a first-class master like Jing Qin. But with the help of the bodyguards, he couldn't kill a reckless man. Those years of practicing martial arts and dancing at the sound of rooster were all in vain. Yushu was distracted by his intimate actions. She tried to pull her hand away but was unable to break free from his shackles. She thought about how hard it was for him to scheme against her, so her heart softened and she didn't argue with him. She let him pinch and play with her hand. They stayed quietly for a while. Then they heard Yushu suddenly asked, "Big brother, have you killed anyone?" Shui Rui slightly tightened his hand and answered softly, "Yes." Yushu didn't mean anything by asking this. She just thought that Shui Rui was going to kill Nyoer with his own hands. He would be stained with blood, so she was a little worried. Shui Rui thought too much. He thought that Yushu thought he was too direct. So he asked tentatively, "Shu, do you think it's not good for Big Brother to do this?" "What's wrong with it?" Yushu asked in a daze. Shui Rui frowned. According to the law, Nyoer is a murderer. He should be handed over to the Ministry of Justice for questioning and then sentenced according to the law. Don't you think it's cruel of me to kill him with my own hands? Yushu couldn't help laughing. She moved her shoulders and thought that if Shui Rui was cruel, then what about her? Qiu Biao and Bai Qing were beheaded in the downtown Shenyuan temple. Ji Huaishan committed suicide by biting his tongue in the court of the Supreme Court. Ji Xingxuan was sent to prison and had to become a dead person. No one who offended her had a good ending. Compared with her, Shui Rui was undoubtedly an upright gentleman. In fact, sometimes she also couldn't figure out why such a modest gentleman, gentle and infatuated, would fall in love with such a sinister and selfish person like her. If he didn't know her character, it wouldn't matter. But he clearly knew her temperament and means, but he still approached her without hesitation. "Prince Ning deliberately schemed against you. Nyoer is a murderer. I don't know how many innocent souls he killed. Big brother, you just take it as doing justice on behalf of heaven. It's not cruel to do such a good deed." Yushu freed a hand and patted his shoulder. Shui Rui was speechless for a moment. He was afraid that she wouldn't like it. How could he be comforted by her? "Well, it's already late. Let's go to bed early." Yushu tilted her head and yawned. Her eyes were misty. Because the room was dark, she didn't need to cover her mouth. She even smacked her lips. Shui Rui saw her little movements very clearly. The corners of his lips curled up, and he suddenly had an evil thought. He leaned forward and said, "After saying so much, aren't you afraid at all? I've heard that the ghosts of those who died unjustly will linger in the world of the living. They will linger around the place where they died, and when it's late at night, they will stand at the bedside of the living and dream about it. Alright, did I tell you that the room next to ours is the room where Zhou Qing was killed?" Yushu was already a little nervous tonight. After hearing him say this, no matter how brave she was, she couldn't help but feel her scalp tingle. At this moment, a cold wind blew on her neck. She was startled. She stood up abruptly. She tripped and fell forward, landing right in front of Shui Rui's chest. Shui Rui held back his laughter and steadily closed his arms to catch her. He lifted her waist and hugged her tightly. He lowered his head to find her forehead and pecked it. He said gently and teasingly, "Be good. Don't be afraid. Come to your big brother's arms." Yushu recovered and guessed that the cold wind was caused by him. She was angry and amused at the same time. She punched him on the back to vent her anger. She turned her head and found his body. She opened her mouth and bit him. She felt the skin under her lips warm. She didn't know where she had bitten. Hiss. Shui Rui sucked in a breath of air and tightened his arms around her waist. He felt an electric shock on his ear that had been bitten by her sharp teeth and soft lips. A numbness and itchiness spread from his back to his waist. In an instant he had the instinctive reaction of a man. Yushu didn't know that she had caused trouble. She bit his ear and wondered which piece of meat it was. She stuck out her tongue and licked it. If Shui Rui were to continue restraining himself and not make a move, then he wouldn't be a normal man. At once, he groped upwards with one hand and pinched the nape of her neck that was exposed outside the collar of her shirt. His other hand snaked downwards and forcefully rubbed the perfectly round area below her buttocks through the thin material of her shirt. Yushu didn't mind letting him have his way and let him pinch her buttocks. There were only 2 layers of summer clothes, so how could they be separated? She could clearly feel the strength of his 5 fingers and her face instantly turned red. "What are you doing? Quickly let go of me." She was afraid of attracting people outside, so she didn't dare to speak loudly. She could only clench her teeth and lower her voice. Her angry rebuke turned into a coquettish pout. Shui Rui was originally a hot-blooded adult man. When he was young, he had a reputation for being a playboy. Although he had high standards and was arrogant and picky about food, It wasn't that he didn't have a few romantic affairs. It was just that 3 years ago he became disheartened and became a monk. But in essence he was still the same young Master Shui who only cared about food and sex. Not to mention that he was facing the woman he loved. At this moment, Yu Shu touched his forbidden zone. His heart was filled with lust and he became bold. Not only did he not let go of her, but he hugged her even tighter. He gently pinched the nape of her neck and lowered his head to place his lips on her soft and cool cheeks. He said with a hoarse smile, "Who told you to bite me?" As he said this, he lifted the back of her head. Regardless of whether she was angry or annoyed, he kissed her mouth. For a moment, the sound of water was heard and their breathing was lingering. He had the intention to seduce and please her, so how could Yu Shu avoid it? In a short while she was being coaxed by him. The two of them were intimate for a while. After all, there were people in the corridor outside and their relationship was a secret that couldn't be revealed. Shui Rui relaxed a little and came back to his senses. In the end he didn't want to neglect her. He only rubbed her arms and legs through her clothes before he reluctantly let go of the flesh next to his mouth. Wet kisses fell on her fluffy eyebrows. His eyes stared deeply at her tamed and unguarded appearance. His chest thumped and he hardened his heart to not take another step forward. Shui Rui pressed Yu Shu, who was panting tenderly against his chest, and he lightly caressed her slender back as he said in a low voice, "Shu, don't be afraid, I'll always be by your side. You also have to stay by my side and don't leave." Chapter 561. After listening to the murderous plot all night, Yu Shu didn't have any nightmares that night. She slept until dawn. This was all thanks to Shui Rui's last teasing, but she didn't thank him at all. Breakfast was simple. The head chef refused to serve, so the proprietress forced him to cook a pot of sweet porridge. Yu Shu asked the guard to go across the street to buy a dozen cages of meat buns. "Big brother, what do you think Nyo Air will do to get in touch with the people outside?" Yu Shu tore a bun with one hand and sat behind a window in the hall, looking at the market downstairs, trying to distinguish which passers-by looked like the spy of Prince Ning's mansion. Shui Rui said, "Yesterday the shopkeeper said that the kitchen was running out of firewood. I promised to send someone to go out and buy firewood today. I asked him to make a list. The people outside will seize this opportunity." After the two of them had their breakfast, they returned to Shui Rui's room to kill time. 2 guards were ordered to buy firewood on the street. They came back at noon and went upstairs to report. Reporting to Darren, "After we went out on the street, someone followed us and inquired about the location of the firewood and charcoal sales. After 2 streets, someone led the way. We followed Darren's instructions and didn't carefully check the things we bought, so we sent them to the back kitchen. Good job. Go down and keep an eye on them. When you see Nyo Air enter the kitchen, come back and inform me." "Yes." The guard that answered was precisely the one that led the way for Yu Shu yesterday morning. He was called Lu Hong, and he was a junior commander of the left guard of the East Gate and a 7th-rank military general. He'd received orders from the emperor to listen to Shui Rui's dispatch this time, and he'd brought along 2 groups of guards that were experts that were capable of fighting and killing. This morning Shui Rui called him to his room before dawn and asked him to choose 2 of his trusted subordinates. He told the 3 of them that Nyo Air was the murderer, but he hid the part about Prince Ning. In order to make them believe him, he even mentioned Yu Shu's identity. "I've also found his head, it's soaking in a vegetable jar in the cellar. Don't make any noise yet. There's someone else behind this killer. I'm guessing that he received an order and will make a move tonight. At that time you'll lie in ambush around my room. Once he makes a move, capture him alive. I want to see who would be so daring as to send an assassin to assassinate an imperial envoy right under the emperor's nose." Lu Hong and the other 2 knew of Shui Rui's reputation as a great detective. Moreover, he was a female fortune-teller who could determine life and death. Thus, they trusted him without a doubt and listened to his every word. Shui Rui had made arrangements and was waiting for Nyo Air to walk into the trap. In the afternoon, Lu Hong hurried upstairs and knocked on the door of Shui Rui's room. "Master," Nyo Air found an excuse to sneak into the woodshed. He stayed inside for a while and then went to the kitchen with a pile of firewood to boil water for cooking. Shui Rui and Yu Shu looked at each other. The latter sighed with emotion at the former's foresight. Just as he said before, Prince Ning's order arrived in just 1 night. Don't worry about him. When night falls, you arrange for people to be at my command. Lu Hong took the order and left the room. Shui Rui stood up and opened the wardrobe by the wall. He picked up the sword he carried with him and unsheathed the scabbard. With 2 fingers, the blade flashed with cold light and buzzed softly. Yushu saw that it was a sword that could cut through iron like mud. She was a little dazed and thought of the rusty ancient sword she gave to Jingchen. She didn't notice before that Shui Rui could also use a sword. Shui Rui carefully wiped the sword, put it back into the scabbard and hung it at the head of the bed. Yushu looked at his cautious movements, and the uneasiness that flashed by last night resurfaced. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "How about I do another divination for you?" Shui Rui turned around. I brought the imitation Taiching tripod and the Tihu incense this time. Yushu said, "My godfather has checked it for me. The herbs in the incense pill are not poisonous and can be used. I know that Nyo Air is going to attack you tonight. I can use the 6 lines divination to see if you can successfully kill him." Shui Rui's eyes flashed and he smiled. "Don't waste that thing. I will definitely kill him." Yushu saw that he was full of confidence and didn't say anything more. She thought it was okay. With Lu Hong and others helping him, Shui Rui couldn't be hurt. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye it was dark. The dinner was cooked by Nyo Air. There was a table full of good dishes, but Yushu didn't take a bite. She was not afraid that Nyo Air would poison them, but because Shui Rui was going to take the risk of killing people at night, so she had no appetite. After dinner, Yushu stayed in Shui Rui's room and didn't leave. It was not until there was a knock on the street outside that Shui Rui said, "Go back to your room. I'll wait for him after turning off the light. Go to bed early and close the door. Don't come out to watch if you hear the sound of fighting." "What, don't you want to go?" Shui Rui looked at her hesitation and joked, "Then don't go. If you are not afraid, just hide in the room and see how I take him down." Yushu's eyes lit up. "Can I?" She was really reluctant to go, leaving Shui Rui here to wait for a murderer to kill him. If she went back to her room to sleep, how could she sleep? Shui Rui glanced deeply at her, and he slowly withdrew his smile. He swept his gaze around the room before pointing at a wardrobe that was half the height of a person that was placed at the corner of the room, and he said, "You can, but you have to hide in the wardrobe and hide yourself well. Only then will I be at ease. Can you keep your composure?" Yushu looked at the wardrobe and agreed without much hesitation. "It's nothing. I'll hide it well." Shui Rui smiled and raised his hand to touch Yushu's ear. He said softly, "Then you stay with me." After the two of them came to an agreement, Shui Rui extinguished all the lights in and out of the room. He pulled Yushu to sit at the head of the bed and said in a low voice, "There's no need to rush. After an hour, when Nyo Air thinks I'm asleep, you can hide in the wardrobe." Although Nyo Air practices external martial arts, he has sharp ears and eyes. He can hear you clearly if you make a little movement. Okay. He just held her hand and didn't do anything more. They were trapped in the darkness. The moonlight from the west window shone through the gauze paper and a pair of hazy, overlapping figures. In this way, Yushu didn't know how long she waited. Just when she felt a little sleepy, Shui Rui beside her stood up. "Shu, you hide." She immediately became spirited and was led by Shui Rui to the front of the wardrobe. Shui Rui opened the wardrobe door and entered it. She raised her head and looked at Shui Rui's blurry figure. As the wardrobe door closed tightly, he disappeared. Outside the wardrobe door came his warning, "Don't come out unless I call you." Yushu responded softly. She leaned her back against the winter pillow and curled up in the stuffy wardrobe. She also covered her mouth with one hand to avoid breathing too loudly. Shui Rui closed the wardrobe door, turned to the bed, took off his sword, and carried it upside down in his hand. His footsteps were light, and he silently walked out of the bedroom. He opened the door, made a gesture to the guards lying in ambush on both sides of the corridor, and stepped into the opposite room. A guard squatting on the beam of the room asked in a low voice, "Boss, why did Lord Shui enter Miss Yu's room? Why ask so much? The prisoner is a martial artist. Be careful that he sneaks in and notices. Keep quiet and hold your breath." Lu Hong scolded softly and clenched the waist knife. He remembered that Shui Rui had secretly told him during the day to pay attention to whether Nyo Air asked the brother who delivered the vegetables which room Yushu lived in. Chapter 562. Inside the room, Shui Rui lay flat on Yushu's bed with his long hair hanging loosely over his shoulders, wearing only a white unlined garment. The gauze curtain was down and the window was closed. From the outside, one could only see a blurry figure, and it was impossible to tell whether it was a man or a woman. Facing the approaching killer, he was very calm. His right hand, which was hanging by his side, firmly held the hilt of his sword, ready to strike. He was not surprised that Lu Hao would try to kill Yushu. In fact, ever since Yushu revealed the death termination strange art at the Hibiscus Gentleman's Banquet, he had been worried that if she showed off too much, she would become a thorn in other people's side. During the years when he and Lu Hao were brothers, he knew that Lu Hao was a man who did not appear to be what he appeared to be. On the surface, the seventh prince had a good demeanor, but in fact, he was narrow-minded and had no tolerance for others. Those who caught his eye could not be kept for his own use, so he would get rid of them quickly. Even though Yu Shu had the death termination strange art, she had no background after all. She only had the title of a female fortune teller. In Lu Hao's eyes, she could not be considered an obstacle for the time being. It would be fine if she did not do anything, but once she did something, Lu Hao would feel threatened, and he would definitely strangle her in the womb. Last night, he wasn't sure if Lu Hao would take advantage of this opportunity to attack Yu Shu, so he waited for a day, waiting for the chef to give himself away. Only then did he confirm that the murderer's target tonight wasn't him, but Yu Shu. Killing Yu Shu, exposing his identity, framing the 11th prince, forcing him to solve the case, and turning against concubine Lu Hao's improvisation had actually killed 3 birds with 1 stone. If it were not for Lu Hao's arrogance, he would not have been able to beat him at his own game and break his killer move. In this matter, Shui Rui hid 2 things from Yu Shu. First, the killer's target tonight. Furthermore, the chef who could behead a person with a single slash did not only practice external martial arts. Think about it. An assassin who could sneak past the guards and sneak into Zhou Qing's room to kill him, how could he only have brute strength? Fortunately, Yu Shu didn't understand this, so he took advantage of her worry and swapped rooms with her. The sky was getting dark. Lu Hong and his 2 companions were squatting on the beam outside the corridor. They were a little drowsy from waiting. Suddenly they heard a soft sound. Lu Hong hurriedly lowered his head and stared at the staircase. He saw that the guard who was assigned to patrol the corridor had fallen to the ground and was dragged into the darkness by a pair of invisible hands. Lu Hong immediately became alert. He raised his hand and signaled to his companions, "Coming." Not long after, a black shadow appeared in the corridor. It groped around the corners of the walls and counted the rooms one by one. It happened to stop at the room where Shui Rui was. The black-clothed figure paused at the door for a moment. He reached out and swiped at the crack of the door. The tightly shut door was easily pushed open. The door creaked slightly, but in the silence of the night, it was loud enough for Shui Rui to hear. He lay motionless on the bed, gripping his long sword tightly. His gaze passed through the curtains and moved to the door. Creak. A black shadow snuck in. Shui Rui adjusted his breathing, and the light sound of him sleeping sounded like a woman sleeping soundly. He squinted and rolled his eyes as he followed the black shadow from the door to the head of his bed. Not long ago, the censor Zhou Qing had lost his head in his sleep. It was the same scene, the same killer. Right now he was like a ruthless executioner. He pulled out a 2-foot-long cleaver from his waist and swung it at the head on the bed with a ferocious look in his eyes. Yu Shu squatted in the wardrobe for a long time. She pricked up her ears, but she could not hear anything outside. The wardrobe door was tightly shut, leaving only a small gap for air to enter. She was so stifled that her forehead was covered in sweat. However, she did not dare to wipe it off. She was afraid that if she moved too much, she would make a noise and startle the killer. She did not know when the killer would arrive and ruin the trap that Shui Rui had set. What if the killer was driven to desperation and hurt him again? After waiting for a while, there was still no sound outside. Yu Shu could not see or hear anything. She could not help but feel anxious. A drop of sweat rolled down her eyelid, stinging her so much that she squeezed her eyes shut. Just then, a sudden sound broke the silence of the night. Clang. The muffled sound came from afar. Yu Shu's heart skipped a beat. She felt something was wrong. She pressed her ear to the wardrobe door and realized that the sound did not come from inside the room, but from outside the door. It seemed to be several floors away. What had happened? Yu Shu's mind was a mess of questions. She wanted to call out to Shui Rui, but she remembered his instructions. If she did not hear his call, she must not make a sound. She could only endure it and not move. However, the next moment the sound outside the door suddenly became louder. With a loud crash, she clearly heard someone shouting, followed by a series of clanging sounds. Yu Shu was stunned. Listening to the sound, it was clearly separated by a wall outside the corridor. Big brother? With such a big noise, why should she endure it? She called out to Shui Rui in a low voice, but did not hear any response from him. Yu Shu's mind was in a mess. She reached out and pushed the wardrobe door open. She bent down and came out. She wiped the sweat from her eyes, and with the moonlight rising outside the window, she swept a glance at the bed not far away. However, the bed was empty and Shui Rui's figure was nowhere to be seen. If there was no one here, then what was going on outside? Could it be that the killer found the wrong room? But where was Shui Rui? Yushu was stunned for a moment. Her mind turned around and her face suddenly changed. She turned around and ran out of the inner room straight to the door. It was a short distance, but she stumbled twice. Once she reached the door latch, she pulled it open with all her might. At the end of the corridor, there was a dim yellow lantern hanging. With one glance, she saw the broken door on the opposite side. She was very sure that the short and messy sound of fighting just now came from the opposite side. Her heart was beating fast. She did not know how she walked into the opposite room. She came to the door of the bedroom where the candle was lit. Through the few guards at the door, she saw Shui Rui sitting by the bed. His hair was disheveled, and behind the messy hair was a cold face. His white robe was slightly open, and half of his body was splashed with red spots. One of his hands was holding the sword hilt, and the dark red liquid flowed along his wrist, through the long sword, and stopped at his feet. Similarly, there was a man dressed in black at his feet, lying in a pool of blood. There was a hole in his chest that kept spurting out blood, and he was still holding a heavy wood-chopping knife in his hand. Half of his face was stuck to the ground, and his eyes were still open before he died. When Yushu saw this scene, if she still did not understand what had happened, she would have wasted her brain. So Ning Wang, the killer, came for her. Reporting to Darren, this person is dead. Lu Hong squatted on the ground and pulled down the mask of the man in black. He was not surprised to see the face of the restaurant chef. He put 2 fingers under the nose and pressed the artery on the side of the man's neck to confirm that the man on the ground had become a corpse. Shui Rui frowned, and then he raised his left hand and said in a low voice, "This person is extremely ferocious and filled with killing intent. I exchanged 2 moves with him and my arm was sliced open by him. I miscalculated in a moment of shock and actually stabbed him to death." Only then did others find that there was a cut on the other sleeve of Shui Rui, and half of it was wet with blood. It seemed that the cut was not shallow. Lu Hong and others were shocked. Darren. When they were about to go forward to help stop the bleeding, a figure passed them and passed in front of them. Yushu crossed over the corpse on the ground and stood in front of Shui Rui. She bent down to check his injured arm with a taut face. When Shui Rui saw Yushu running over, his expression softened. Neo Air's heart was pierced by his sword, and he could not be more dead. He was no longer in danger. Seeing that she stared at his arm as if she was facing a great enemy, Shui Rui comforted her. "It's okay, it's just a cut. It's just that the cut was a little longer and deeper." But Yushu ignored him. After confirming where the cut was, she took out a clean handkerchief and gently pressed the cut. She turned her head and said to Lu Hong and others who were dumbfounded, "Quickly prepare hot water and find a doctor. If any of you brought any injury medicine, quickly bring it here." Yes. So Lu Hong and others hurriedly turned and ran, leaving Yushu and Shui Rui behind. No one cared about the corpse on the ground. Yushu smelled the stench of blood in the room. She lowered her head and looked at her hand that was covering his wound. Her palm was wet and warm, making her feel complicated. She bit the tip of her tongue and asked bitterly, "Why did you lie to me?" She was still hiding in the cupboard, thinking that she would go through thick and thin with him. But like a fool, she was silently blocked by him. He clearly didn't have to take the risk. Prince Ning wanted to kill her, but he became the bait. Shui Rui lightly tossed the sword in his hand onto the corpse, and he emptied his hand to place it on the back of her hand that was covering her wound. He laughed in a low voice and said, "If I tell you the truth, will you still listen to me?" Yushu pursed her lips. "Don't think too much. This is the best solution. You are a defenseless girl. How can I let you fight with a murderer?" Yushu knew that what Shui Rui said was reasonable. Even if he told her in advance that the person Neo Air wanted to kill was her, what could she do? It would just add to her troubles. "How do you know that Prince Ning wants to kill me? What if he doesn't intend to kill me?" Neo Air didn't go to assassinate Shui Rui, not because he went to the wrong room, but because he received an order to kill her, the person who came out to disturb the situation. She could also expose the identity of the murderer. There was no benefit in assassinating Shui Rui, but it was more worthwhile to take the opportunity to kill her, the female fortune teller who was proficient in the art of death. Yushu didn't think about this before, not because she couldn't think of it, but because with Shui Rui around, she subconsciously felt that she was dependent on him, so she didn't think too much about it. "I asked Lu Hong to keep an eye on Neo Air secretly. I knew that he inquired about your room, so I was sure that Prince Ning wanted to take this opportunity to kill you." Shui Rui told her the truth. It was over and there was nothing to hide. Yushu felt very upset. On the one hand, she was moved by Shui Rui's protection, but on the other hand, she felt guilty and frustrated. If she hadn't rashly run to Pei County and honestly passed the letter, she wouldn't have caused this trouble. Shu, what's wrong with you? Shui Rui saw that her face was not right. Niu Er mistook you for me, so he wanted to kill you. That's why you were injured. If she hadn't shown up at the beginning, Niu Er's target would only be Shui Rui. At that time he would pretend to assassinate her to achieve the purpose of exposing his identity. Shui Rui didn't need to take this risk. It's all my fault. I made you suffer. This time she was more helpful than helpful. Yu Shu smiled bitterly. Between her and Shui Rui, she had always been the one who got more than he gave. She gave a little, but he gave a lot in return. If this went on, she wouldn't be secretly happy that she took advantage of him, but gradually became a little uneasy. What right did she have to make him fall in love with her? Was she worth it? Shui Rui's gaze darkened when he saw her blindly blaming herself, and he couldn't help but exert a bit more force on the hand that was pressing her down, and his voice carried a slightly self-mocking tone. If you think like this, then I'll tell you the truth. I did it intentionally. What on purpose? Yu Shu didn't understand. I didn't tell you on purpose. I took the risk for you on purpose. I was stabbed by the murderer on purpose and got hurt on purpose. Yu Shu raised her head blankly and met Shui Rui's dark eyes. Do you remember the time when the two gangsters of the Tihan Business Association met you in the capital and sent killers to find you? Yes. Yu Shu frowned slightly. She didn't know why he mentioned this. I also remember. Shui Rui said in a low voice, that time it was Jing Chen who took the knife for you. Yu Shu's expression changed. I still feel regret now. If I had grabbed the knife at that time, then the man you liked from the beginning should have been me. Later you wouldn't have suffered so much for him. On the night when you were caught by the Celestial Commissioner, I saw you suffering from the pain of your broken finger. I made up my mind that no matter what means I had to use, even if I had to take advantage of the situation, I would take you away and win your heart. Yu Shu opened her mouth and saw the bright feelings in his eyes. She wanted to say something, but the words were stuck in her throat. I just want you to understand that I am a man who deserves to be entrusted with the rest of your life. I can do what others can't do for you. I can do what others can do better. Shui Rui's words had been suppressed in his heart for a long time. In the past he would only express it with his actions. Today for the first time he clearly conveyed it to Yu Shu. His sincerity was laid bare in front of her. Shui Rui's sincerity was always beyond her expectation. In an instant Yu Shu's heart went numb. Just now she was still sentimental, but now her eyes suddenly lit up. She was simply looking for trouble by arguing with him about those trivial things. Because the two of them were obviously the same kind of people. They both wanted to do things for someone who was worth it. So naturally, only when they felt that they were worth it, would they do things without hesitation. Shui Rui treated her well because he felt that she was worth it. She wanted to treat Shui Rui well because he was worth it. They were in love with each other. That was all. Where could she find another person who was as crazy as her? I don't know how to say good things, but I do have one thing that you should remember. Yu Shu lowered her eyes and her gaze fell on their crossed palms. She whispered to him, if you don't leave or abandon me, I will follow you in life and death. Chapter 563. Niuer sneaked into the front building from the backyard and knocked out 3 guards who were patrolling at night. In addition to Lu Hong and the other 2 who were arranged by Shui Rui to hide, there were 4 people sleeping in the room downstairs. After being awakened by the fighting sound upstairs, they ran up one after another. It just so happened that Lu Hong and the others had been sent out by Yu Shu, and they met Yu Shu and Shui Rui in the corridor. Then Lu Hong and the others were delegated tasks. Those who boiled water went to boil water, those who fetched medicine went to fetch medicine, those who asked for a physician went to fetch a physician, and then they carried their unconscious companions back to their rooms. For a time, no one disturbed Yu Shu and Shui Rui. Lu Hong came back with the medicine. The door of Yu Shu's room was kicked by him. At that time, the murderer sneaked in and he did not dare to act rashly. Until he heard the fighting sound in the room, he hurriedly rushed in. However, they were still a step too late. When they entered, Shui Rui's sword just happened to pierce through the murderer. Lu Hong only managed to kick the man in black to the ground. The 2 companions behind him didn't even have a chance to show off their skills. Your Excellency, it's not easy to find a doctor in the middle of the night. Let me clean your wound and stop the bleeding with medicine first. When Shui Rui heard the sound of footsteps, he stopped the topic of conversation with Yu Shu. Before Lu Hong walked into the inner room, the 2 of them had already consciously let go of the hand that was holding each other's hand, and the affection between their brows was concealed, causing others to be unable to see anything unusual. Let me do it. Yushu reached out and asked for the bottle in Lu Hong's hand. She was in danger on the way from Yiyang to the capital. She was very skilled in bandaging and decocting medicine. In addition, He Fangji, the doctor, was her godfather. It was easy to treat the wound for Shuirui. Is there hot water? Yushu asked as she carefully rolled up Shuirui's sleeves. Yes, someone will bring it up later. When Lu Hong saw Yushu's action, he was relieved. He stood aside, brought over the lighted candlestick, and helped her. Shuirui's arm was slashed by the murderer's hatchet-like weapon. It extended from 3 inches above his elbow all the way below his elbow, and the injury was at his joints. Fortunately, his tendons and bones weren't cut. It was just that the wound on his flesh was red and it looked terrifying. Shuirui saw Yushu cleaning and dressing him with a straight face. He did not dare to say it was painful. After she bandaged it, his forehead was covered with cold sweat. Yushu looked up at him and said nothing. She washed her hands in the basin of water in the basin. She washed his face with a handkerchief and said, Shuirui, how to deal with this murderer? Wait until we find a doctor. I think you'll need a few stitches on your wound. She frowned as she finished speaking. Her gaze fell on the corpse on the ground and she said, How should we deal with this murderer? He's dead and we can't get anything out of him. We don't even know who ordered him to do this. Drag him away and search him. Shuirui ordered Lu Hong. Search his room, the cellar where he hid his head, and the rice and firewood he bought during the day. Maybe we'll find something. Lu Hong answered and called his companions outside to carry Niu Er's body out. Now that there were no outsiders in the room, Yushu finally whispered to Shuirui in a small voice, I know it was Ning Wang who did it, but I can't identify him. It is so frustrating. Although Dan valued the Tao of change, they had never used divination as evidence. After all, it was hard to tell the truth from the lies. Even if they spoke, it would only be a one-sided story. When it came to solving a case, it was important to have concrete evidence. If Ning Wang knows that Niu Er is dead, he must be more aggrieved than you. Shuirui was actually in the mood to joke with her at this moment. Yushu thought about how Lu Hao's plan had failed and how he had wasted his efforts. Her expression became better. As the two were talking, someone ran in from outside the door. It was Lu Hong who had returned. Darren. We found a secret letter on Niu Er's body. Please take a look. It was no wonder Lu Hong was so shocked. After all, the death of an imperial envoy was a big case. If they did not investigate it clearly, they would be punished for not doing their job well. On the contrary, if Shuirui successfully solved this case, he, as the small commander of the guards, might be promoted to an official position. This sealed letter had been opened, but it was obvious that Lu Hong did not have time to read it before it was delivered to Shuirui. Yushu's heart jumped. Not good. The letter found on the murderer's body was most likely related to Lu Yi. Damn it. She was so focused on finding out what Shuirui had hidden from her that she forgot to search the murderer's body when no one was around. She looked at Shuirui in annoyance. He took out the so-called secret letter and read it. In the next moment, his expression changed slightly. How is it? Did you find anything? Lu Hong asked anxiously. Shuirui hesitated. According to this letter, the one who ordered the murderer to kill Censor Zhou was the 11th prince. Yushu's face darkened. Lu Hong was shocked. Shuirui passed over the secret letter to them, and both of them read it successively. Sure enough, even though the letter was obscure, it still inadvertently mentioned the 11th prince, and there was even a scarlet red mark at the place where the letter was signed. It was written in an ancient style, and they could discern that it was the character, Yu. If I remember correctly, the 11th prince's character is Yu. Shuirui said. When Yushu heard him say it so clearly, she felt strange. Then someone ran in from outside. Your Excellency, please take a look. This was found in the fire under the kitchen stove. The murderer, Niu Er, wanted to destroy it but left it. Yushu raised her head to take a look and saw a guard holding a piece of black wood in his hand, handing it over to Shuirui. She moved closer and saw clearly that it was a blackened plate that was only the size of 2 fingers. One side was burned off but the other side was still there. However, there were no words on it, only a few strange lines were carved on it. It looked like waves and clouds at the same time. Her heart skipped a beat. She couldn't help but curse. This treacherous Prince Ning. How many things did he prepare to frame that fool Lu Yi? However, Shuirui examined the burnt command token in his hand over and over again as his slanted brows gradually knit together, and then he passed the command token to Lu Hong. Take a look. Lu Hong looked carefully and shook his head. Your subordinate's eyes are poor. I can't tell where this token is from. Does your excellency not recognize it? No, I've seen this token before. Lu Hong's eyes lit up. He hurriedly asked, then what is this? Shui Rui's face was expressionless as he replied, in my day, an empire, whenever a prince leaves the palace to build his own residence, His Majesty will allow him to raise a private army of no more than 50 people. Although they are registered and reported to the Ministry of War, they only listen to their master's orders. This private army is equivalent to a suicide squad. Every one of them has a mark, and some of them don't even know each other until the day they die. They only have a waist tag to prove their identity, and they will leave their bodies until the day they die. The one in your hand should be the waist tag of a suicide squad from a prince's residence. Yushu was stunned. Louis was not old enough to leave the palace. How could he have a private army? Then where did this suicide soldier token come from? Lu Hong also thought of this question. His expression suddenly became strange. The criminal who killed Zhou Qing had walked right into the trap. What's worse was that he was dead. What's worse was that they found two pieces of evidence that pointed to the two princes. Lu Hong didn't dare ask Shui Rui which prince's estate the burnt token in his hand belonged to. At this moment he'd finally realized that no matter if he was able to investigate this case or not, he wouldn't be able to reap any benefits. All of you go out and search again. See if there is anything else missing. Take care of Niu Er's body and Lord Zhou's head. We will return to the capital tomorrow morning to report to His Majesty. As soon as Shui Rui finished speaking, Lu Hong and the others tactfully left. They did not look good. It seemed that they were destined to have a sleepless night. As soon as they left, Yushu stood up and closed the room door before retreating to the side of the bed, and then she stared fixedly at Shui Rui as she asked in a low voice, "What exactly is going on? It's fine if it's a secret letter on the prisoner, but why is there another token on his waist?" After following Shui Rui for the past 2 days, she always felt that her brain was not enough. Shui Rui turned to look at her. "Didn't I promise you that I would not let Prince Ning go so easily?" Hearing this, Yushu was surprised and delighted. She sat down beside him and said, "I knew it was you who did it. I knew it. How could I forget to search the killer's body? You should not have forgotten. What kind of ambush did you set up? How could they find the evidence of the 11th prince's crime?" Shui Rui raised his eyebrows. "What is the relationship between the 11th prince and us? We don't need to cover for him." It sounded straightforward, but Yushu did not forget the main topic. "Isn't this the trap that Prince Ning dug for you? How can you not fill it in?" Shui Rui asked her in return, "Who do you think placed the waist tag that was found in the kitchen there?" Yushu was silent for a moment and stared at him again. "Where did you get the token of the men of sacrifice of Prince Ning's mansion?" "The token was placed by Shui Rui and couldn't run away, so it must be the real thing. But how could such a crucial thing fall into the hands of Shui Rui? It's a long story. I'll tell you about it in the future." Shui Rui could not move his left hand, so he reached out his right hand and held her hand across half of his body. He pulled her hand over and placed it on his knee. His wound was burning with pain, so he pinched her little hand to ease the pain. The token of Prince Ning's mansion was brought here by Hadaku last night. After confirming that Niuer wanted to kill Yushu, he privately asked Hadaku to burn one side of the token and put it under the kitchen stove in the mess at night, so as to create the illusion that Niuer, the cook who cooked tonight, destroyed the evidence. As for the secret letter I left on the murderer, it was for— Wait, don't say it first. Yushu raised her hand to interrupt Shui Rui. She rubbed her forehead and said, "Let me think about it first." She couldn't always rely on his cleverness and not use her brain. This habit was not good. Shui Rui laughed. "Well, let me think about it." Yushu did not hesitate for long before an idea struck her. She snapped her fingers and blurted out, "You're doing this so that Prince Ning and Lu Yi will fight each other." "That's right, by leaving behind a secret letter that pointed to Lu Yi and creating a waist token that pointed to Lu Hao, the number of suspects in the assassination of the imperial envoy had increased from 1 to 2. Prince Ning knew who the real culprit was, but Lu Yi did not. Lu Yi was wrongly accused. If the dirty water was only poured on him, it would definitely be following Prince Ning's plan and causing Consort Lu's faction to hate Shui Rui. However, now that Prince Ning had also been pushed out, even if Lu Yi was a fool, he had no choice but to suspect his good brother. Between the two of them, one of them must take the blame. What kind of crime was the assassination of the imperial envoy? At this juncture, the brotherly love and brotherly respect were nonsense. Shui Rui said that a tooth for a tooth. It turned out that this was the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Awesome. Chapter 564. On the morning of the 22nd of the 6th month, Shui Rui ordered the guards to prepare the carriage, then he brought along the corpse of the murderer, Niu Er, and 2 pieces of evidence that pointed at the princes before he left the restaurant where the murder took place and returned to the capital. The spy squatting outside the restaurant saw them go far away, and then he showed his head. After wandering on the street for half an hour, he entered the restaurant with the seal torn off and inquired about what happened last night. However, it was destined that he would not be able to get anything out of them. Last night, Shui Rui had ordered the guards who came along with him to keep their mouths shut. The manager and the waiters had to stay in their rooms at night and were not allowed to come out. When Shui Rui and the others left, only then did they realize that the head cook had disappeared. They did not know that someone had died last night, and they also did not know that Shui Rui had found a human head in their cellar. It's about the 2 princes. The right and wrong have not been confirmed. I don't know the emperor's intention. In my opinion, you'd better keep your mouth shut. Don't leak a word about what happened in the restaurant last night. Be careful of a careless mouth and cause a disaster. Shui Rui warned the guards who knew the truth. Fortunately, Lu Hong and others were sensible and immediately said that they wouldn't talk. Don't worry, Your Excellency. We can distinguish the pros and cons. The carriage and horses left the city and went on the official road. They ran fast all the way. They had to hurry and try to reach the city gate before dark. Last night, Shui Rui and Yushu didn't have a rest. They went out of the city and had lunch early on the way. Yushu couldn't help dozing off. However, the road in the suburbs was uneven. She leaned against the wall of the carriage and woke up from time to time. She couldn't fall asleep even if she wanted to. Shui Rui sat in front of her. When he saw how sleepy she looked, a hint of a smile flashed across his eyes. After thinking for a while, he pulled down the curtain behind him to block his line of sight outside the window. Then he supported his sutured left arm and changed his position to sit in the middle. When the car turned dark, Yushu suddenly raised her head and looked at Shui Rui with sleepy eyes. She saw him placing a soft pillow on his lap and patting it as he whispered to her, "It's more comfortable to sleep here." Yushu hesitated for a moment and resisted the urge to lie on top of him. She shook her head and said, "No, you are tired. If I fall asleep and accidentally touch your wound, it will be bad." As she spoke, she stretched her body and patted her face. She felt a little more awake. "Are you really not going to sleep?" Shui Rui confirmed with her. "I'm not sleeping." "All right then." As Shui Rui spoke, he picked up the soft pillow on his lap. He stretched out his hand and placed it on her thigh. Then he tilted his body and bent his long legs. In the next moment he used it as a pillow. Yushu looked at Shui Rui lying on her lap and was speechless. "I'm going to sleep for a while. Wake me up when your legs are numb." Shui Rui's low voice sounded a little tired. Yushu's eyes softened. She nodded and looked at his left arm on the side of his body. After hesitating for a moment, she reached out and held his wrist to prevent him from moving after he fell asleep and affecting his wound. Shui Rui closed his eyes and the corner of his mouth slightly curled up. Originally, he was just teasing her and wanted to rest for a while before getting up. But this pillow really suited him and he fell asleep unknowingly. Yushu, on the other hand, was sitting steadily. She lowered her head and looked at his sleeping face. She didn't close her eyes throughout the journey. When the group of people returned to the capital, it was already dusk. Shui Rui dropped Yushu off at Wangji Tower, then brought the living and the dead in the direction of the Supreme Court of Justice. Before entering the palace, he had to first report to his superior, the Supreme Court Chancellor Guo Huaiyan. After all, a prince assassinating an imperial envoy was a big matter, and it would be stressful for him to face the emperor alone. Once Yushu returned upstairs, she laid down on the bed. Her entire body was stiff, and every movement made her sore. She thought to herself, "This job of being someone's pillow, don't expect me to have a second chance." "Miss, dinner and hot soup are ready. Do you want to eat something first or wash up first?" Xiao Qing walked in and asked as she bent down beside the bed. Yushu lifted her eyelids and groaned. She said weakly, "Leave it there. I'm going to sleep for a while. Wake me up after 2 hours." Xiao Qing squatted down and reached out her hand. "Let this servant give you a massage?" "Okay." Under the maid's moderate strength, Yushu quickly began to snore. On the other side, Shui Rui had gone to the Supreme Court of Justice and found Guo Huaiyan, who was looking through official documents. He reported the incident that occurred in Pei County like this, and he even mentioned Yushu, yet from the beginning until the end he didn't mention a single word about Prince Ning. As for how he had stabbed Zhou Qing's murderer to death, he had already prepared an explanation. "I sensed that the murderer was in the restaurant, but I couldn't find Zhou Qing's head. At my wit's end, I remembered my sworn sister's death divination art and had someone send her a letter, asking her to perform a divination. When she received the news, she ran to Pei County to find me. Thanks to her help, I was able to see that Niu Er was the murderer and found Zhou Qing's head in the restaurant's cellar. Later on, my sworn sister reflected on herself and calculated that she would meet with a fatal disaster last night. I suspected that the criminal was about to commit murder again, so I took precautions early on and set up a trap, waiting for him to walk into it. Who would have thought that I would slip up and stab him to death, injuring myself as well? Shui Rui's face was full of remorse. Guo Huaiyan hadn't heard the 2 pieces of evidence and was still in the mood to comfort him. This is pardonable. Don't worry about it. Besides, the murderer was sentenced to death. It's not a big deal that you killed him, but, without his confession, we don't know who the mastermind is. Guo Huaiyan was still regretting when Shui Rui dropped a piece of important news. The witness is dead, but I found 2 related pieces of evidence on the deceased. I brought them back for your excellency to have a look. Oh? Take them out and let me have a look. Shui Rui took out a letter and a waist token from his bosom and handed them to Guo Huaiyan. Not long after, Guo Huaiyan's expression changed. The letter pointed to Lu Yi in black and white. As for the waist token, if Shui Rui could recognize it, how could Guo Huaiyan not? Not only did he recognize that it was a death soldier's waist token from a prince's residence, but he also knew which prince's residence it belonged to. I wish to enter the palace to report this matter. Will your excellency accompany me? Guo Huaiyan was in a difficult position. The 2 items in his hands weighed heavily on his heart. How could he not know that if this case were to continue investigating, it might end up in a difficult situation? However, as the Chancellor of the Supreme Court, he could not just sit back and do nothing. Does Prime Minister Shui know about this matter? Guo Huaiyan asked Shui Lingnan. I came to see your excellency the moment I returned to the capital. I did not send a letter back home. This case was investigated by the imperial edict. My grandfather will not interfere. Meeting Shui Rui's calm and determined gaze, Guo Huaiyan sighed inwardly. He kept the 2 pieces of evidence and said, "Forget it. I will go with you." Shui Rui cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, your excellency." Chapter 565. Did they fail? Lu Hao's face darkened when he heard the report from the spy who came back from Pei County. The spy bowed deeply and did not dare to raise his head. This subordinate saw with my own eyes that Shui Rui boarded the carriage with a young woman. She should be the one who sneaked into the restaurant 2 days ago. Lu Hao's eyes sharpened. She is still alive. Where is the assassin? The assassin is missing. Missing? Hearing him murmur, the spy's legs softened and he knelt down. Your Highness, please forgive me. After they left, I went to the restaurant to inquire about them. However, those people were all under the supervision of Shui Rui. They were not allowed to leave their rooms at night. They did not know anything. I only found some traces of fighting in their rooms. I guessed that the assassin was caught while committing the crime. So, early this morning, Shui Rui returned with his men. When Lu Hao heard this, his expression became slightly better. Even though Yu Shu didn't die, Shui Rui had captured the murderer that he had arranged. As long as they searched for information, Lu Hao's men would be able to expose Lu Yi. At that time, he wouldn't have to worry about concubine Lu's faction becoming enemies with the Shui clan. Lu Hao sneered. Lu Tan's complacent face flashed before his eyes. He thought in his heart, you're just a little kid. You're not studying in the mountains. What are you stirring up when you come back to the capital? Do you think that you can rely on Prime Minister Shui's mansion behind you? You dare to compete with me? I won't make a move. I will let the Lu and Shui family fight it out first. Sooner or later, I will take care of both of you. Alright, go and do your work. Yes, I will take my leave. In a corner of the flower garden, Lu Hao was left alone. He could hear him muttering to himself. How did Yu Shu escape this disaster? Perhaps she calculated that she would be killed? If that's the case, her death sentence strange art is not like what she said to others. She can't be left alive. I have to find another opportunity to get rid of her. It was late. Lu Hao was in a good mood. When he left the flower garden, he met the maid sent by concubine Ning. He was not unhappy. Instead, he sent the maid back to tell her that he would be resting in the upper room tonight. This Ning Wangfei had been born into a scholarly family, but her personality was a bit wooden. She was only above average in appearance, so she couldn't enter the eyes of Lu Hao, who had read countless people. So the husband and wife treated each other with respect. The number of times Lu Hao slept in the study was more than the number of times he slept in the same room with her. When concubine Ning knew that Lu Hao was coming, she quickly dressed up and had the kitchen prepare tonics for supper. 2 days ago, she had heard the news that mother-in-law Xu Fei in the palace had intentions of finding a Cifei for Lu Hao. This was why she was anxious. She had only been married for 3 months and there was no news in her belly. If Ning Wangfu added someone at this time, if she won Wang Ye's favor, would her days be good? Therefore, the most important thing now was to quickly conceive a child and stabilize her position as Wang Fei. This concubine Ning hurriedly prepared, but she did not guard against Lu Hao stumbling halfway. Wang Yi, Wang Yi. Hearing the call behind him, Lu Hao stopped. Turning his head, he saw the steward of the front yard rushing over. Lu Hao frowned. What's the matter? The people from the palace are outside the gates. The saint has summoned you to enter the palace. Lu Hao's right eyelid twitched violently. Before the sky brightened, Yu Shu woke up. She was too tired when she came back yesterday. She didn't even eat a bite before she went to bed. The maids called her twice but she didn't wake up. When Yu Shu woke up, she asked about Shui Rui. Knowing that he hadn't returned all night, she woke up. She had the servants prepare hot water for her to take a bath. After eating something, she shut herself in the little study. She had Xiao Dai guard outside the door and not to be disturbed. Taking out the little green furnace, she added the Tihu incense powder that Fangji had tested into the bottom of the furnace. She lit a box of green charcoal that cost 5 taels of silver. When smoke came out of the cauldron and she smelled the refreshing fragrance, she rubbed her palms and sat in front of the furnace with 3 copper coins in her hand. This divination was for Shui Rui. The question was whether his plot against Prince Ning would succeed. To ask about the lawsuit, one had to know the zodiac signs of Shui Rui, Lu Hao, and Lu Yi. It wasn't hard for Yu Shu to know that the 6 hand trigrams were inserted into the 8 trigrams. Using the 6 trigrams and the 6 trigrams, there was an ominous sign. Looking at the ghost eyes of the official ghost, the ghost thief was activated. In the 6 trigrams, the ghost god was also strange. The thief was a thief, but it could steal wealth. Therefore, when the ghost thief was activated, it would be an auspicious sign. But if it encountered a villain, it would be an ominous sign. When the result of this divination was out, Yu Shu smiled. Shui Rui was the villain in this plot. No matter which one it was, Lu Hao or Lu Yi, they wouldn't be able to gain any advantage. In the end, it was a personal divination. Yu Shu was much more at ease and didn't need to worry that Shui Rui would be at a disadvantage. In the blink of an eye, she saw the thinner and thinner smoke in the furnace and couldn't help but feel her heart ache. Originally, 1 pill of incense was a small matter and could be used 2 or 3 times. But after Fangji broke off some of it, she only did 1 divination and it was gone. It really couldn't be used. The sun rose. From the Zhengyang gate at the foot of the imperial city, a few figures dressed in court robes walked out. They didn't lag behind, they were old and young. They stopped outside. Shui Lingnan, who had been summoned to the imperial study last night, bowed to the Supreme Court official Guo Huai and then said, "Qingbi, this child is impulsive." Fortunately, Jing Ming controlled the situation and didn't cause any trouble. "Yuxiong thanks you." Guo Huai and Shui Lingnan were both court officials and could be said to be good friends. Seeing this, he quickly held his hand and said with a bitter smile, "Old brother, you're overpraising me. Qingbi is also my junior. Encountering such a big matter, I naturally can't sit back and do nothing. Fortunately, His Majesty is wise and can distinguish right from wrong. But in the future when I investigate this case, I will need your help." Last night, Guo Huai and Shui Rui went to the palace together. He was mentally prepared. If this case was to be investigated, it would fall on his head. Sure enough, after the emperor's anger, there was news of the 2 princes confronting each other. Both of them said that they were innocent. Finally, the emperor slammed the table and said, "Investigate. Official Wei, help Zhen investigate to the end. Zhen wants to see which unfilial son dared to harm Zhen's officials." "Don't worry." Shui Lingnan readily agreed. The 3 of them parted at Zhengyang gates and each boarded the carriage that came to pick them up. Without other people around, Shui Lingnan's cold face relaxed. He glanced at Shui Rui, who was sitting quietly below, and said, "Even though it was a bit impulsive, but this matter, you did well." Shui Lingnan was a shrewd old man. Last night, when he entered the palace and heard Shui Rui narrate the matter in front of the emperor, he knew what was right and what was wrong. "Ning Wangfu's death warrior token, where did you get it?" Shui Rui lowered his head and answered, "Grandson accidentally obtained it when I was traveling." When Shui Lingnan heard that it was a matter of the past 3 years, he lost interest in asking more. He stroked his beard and said, "Last month when the court proposed to appoint a successor, Jing Wang had some support and Ning Wang urged him. This time he had a good plan and wanted to sit on the mountain to reap the spoils. I think he was a bit impatient. His Majesty's body has been unwell recently, and even though his mind isn't well, he won't allow them to act recklessly. Ning Wang or the 11th prince, no matter who took the blame in the end, His Majesty would be more suspicious of them." In the end, the two turned against each other, which was beneficial to Jing Wang. As he spoke, he smiled and shook his head, thinking of something. Shui Rui didn't speak more. The grandfather and grandson didn't continue to discuss the matter. It wasn't that they didn't care, but that at this step they didn't need to interfere. When they were almost at the Prime Minister Fu, Shui Lingnan opened his mouth again and asked in a seemingly casual manner, "The email you recognized outside, the female fortune teller who can determine life and death. Find a day to bring her back to the Fu and let this old man see her." Shui Rui's eyes flashed and he raised his head. "Grandfather?" Shui Lingnan's eyes looked at him. "Since she's an adopted sister, it's natural that she's legitimate. After I've seen her character, there's no harm in recognizing a junior so that you can burn 3 incense sticks and formally become brother and sister." Shui Rui's expression froze, then he slowly nodded, "I'll tell her later." Shui Lingnan withdrew his gaze and pushed open the carriage door. He was helped out of the carriage by the housekeeper who was waiting outside. His footsteps were steady as he entered through the main gate. Shui Rui stayed in the carriage for a moment longer. He pursed his lips and looked down at his arm that was wrapped in thick bandages. The corners of his mouth gradually turned up in a sarcastic smile. Shui Rui changed his clothes at home and then went to Wang Jilu. It was just past lunchtime. Today was cloudy and cool. Yushu was sitting on a chair in the middle of the courtyard, looking at an account book. Seeing him come in, she put down the abacus in her hands and smiled at him. "Did things go smoothly?" Shui Rui nodded and walked over to her side and sat down. "Then why aren't you happy?" Shui Rui turned to look at her. "Why am I unhappy?" Yushu raised her eyebrows and moved forward. She stretched out a finger and gently touched his forehead, then his nose and finally his chin. She said, "Here, here and here." Seeing her counting his entire face, Shui Rui couldn't help but laugh. His expression suddenly relaxed. "I'm just tired. How can I be unhappy? Did you have a good rest last night? Did you eat lunch?" Yushu shook her head. "No, I was waiting for you. The food is still hot. I guess you're busy now, so you definitely didn't have time to eat." Shui Rui's smile became more obvious. There was no one else in the courtyard, so he raised his hand and pinched her chin. He shook his head and said, "Good sister, your big brother didn't dote on you in vain." Yushu patted his hand and rolled her eyes. She stood up and pulled his right sleeve to walk into the room. "I asked someone to get the medicine. After lunch you should drink the medicine for me. Don't complain about the bitterness." Shui Rui looked at the back of her head affectionately and responded softly. After lunch, Yushu stared at Shui Rui as he drank the medicine. Seeing that he didn't even blink his eyebrows, she was somewhat disappointed. She asked someone to boil the medicine early in the morning. She tasted it in advance. It was very bitter. She wanted to see Shui Rui's embarrassed face. "What's wrong?" Shui Rui didn't know that Yushu was up to no good. Seeing her staring at him, he thought that something was wrong. "I wanted to see if you finished drinking it." Yushu embarrassedly took the bowl of medicine and put it to the side. She then poured a cup of tea for him to rinse his mouth. When the two of them were alone, they usually talked about things that were not known to others. Usually there was no servant to serve them. After a few times, it was easy for her to serve tea and pour water. "Quickly tell me. Last night, when you went to the palace to report, what did the emperor say?" Shui Rui swallowed the bitter taste in his mouth and slowly told her. Last night he invited Guo Huaiyan to the palace to meet the emperor. What he said in front of the emperor was the same as what he said in front of Guo Huaiyan. However, the one who handed over the 2 pieces of evidence was the always incorruptible and impartial official of the Supreme Court. The emperor's anger could be imagined. On one side was an official who was killed by the murderer, and on the other side was his son who schemed. No matter which son did this, he couldn't tolerate it. "Actually, I'm guessing that there's another reason why His Majesty is so angry. It's because of you," Shui Rui said. He purposely pointed out that Yushu was being targeted by the murderer in front of the emperor. Yushu blinked and understood. She sneered and said, "That's right. If I, the person whose life is related to the world, die, not to mention an imperial son, even if it was a crown prince, he would have to roll to the ground." These words were not false, but the precious one was not her, but Jing Chen, that great calamity. Lu Hao had miscalculated this time. He wanted to get rid of her, but he didn't know that her life was not something he could afford. What did Ning Wang say? Yushu asked again. He of course would not admit it. As for Lu Yi, he felt even more wronged. Shui Rui had a ruminating expression. It's a pity that you weren't there and didn't see the scene of the two arguing. Ning Wang and the 11th prince had been called into the palace at the last minute and were completely unaware of the impending disaster. When the emperor threw the secret letter and the death warrior's token at their faces, they were stunned. Lu Yi was really dumbfounded. Lu Hao panicked. The former was confused, but the latter understood. When the emperor asked about their crimes, the two of them insisted that they didn't do it. At the beginning, Ning Wang pretended to say that someone had framed them, but Lu Yi didn't appreciate it. Seeing that he was in trouble, he pointed at Ning Wang and questioned him, pestering him endlessly, saying that he killed Zhou Qin. Shui Rui's prediction was correct. In the face of disaster, even husband and wife had to separate to protect themselves, not to mention the two brothers of the imperial family. Thinking of Lu Yi pointing at Ning Wang's nose in the imperial study and accusing him with righteous words, Shui Rui felt that Ning Wang's red face was laughable. Last night, Lu Yi entered the palace alone and didn't know how to react. He only knew how to protect himself. When he returned and told consort Lu, many people would think for him. I think that by now he should have realized that Lu Hao had failed to frame him and would want to fight Lu Hao to the death. Don't forget that the cause of the entire incident was because the emperor wanted to investigate the background of the governor of the two provinces, Lu Buhuan, and weaken the Lu family's local power. Now that the matter had blown up, it gave the emperor an excuse. If Lu Yi took the blame, Lu Buhuan would definitely be implicated, and the Lu family would be implicated. On the other hand, Lu Hao had lost his trust in front of the emperor. In addition, the brothers were not on good terms. Even if he managed to escape in the end, his vitality would be damaged. Those who do evil are doomed to destruction. These two people are not good people. Yushu rejoiced in their misfortune. Shui Rui looked at her and found it strange. He asked, Ning Wang is one thing, but I don't know, when did Lu Yi make you so angry? He didn't know that during the Shuangyang gathering, Lu Yi had snuck into Yushu's resting room with ill intentions. In the end, he had been beaten and threatened by Yushu. Yushu choked. She feigned innocence and said, with his conduct, can't I find him displeasing? She didn't notice that her evasive expression had fallen into Shui Rui's eyes. He paid attention to it. If he investigated it later, there would be more complications. This was a story for the future and would not be mentioned for now. Chapter 566. Late at night, Yushu was lying on the bed. She tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. Shui Rui came back during the day with good news and bad news. The good news was that Prince Ning had shot himself in the foot. The bad news was that Shui Rui's grandfather, Prime Minister Shui, proposed to see her. What's worse was that according to the old official's wish, she and Shui Rui should burn incense and become sworn brothers. Yushu wanted to cry but had no tears. Wasn't this forcing her and Shui Rui to pretend to be brother and sister? If they really followed Shui Rui's grandfather's wish and became brother and sister, what would happen to them in the future? Compared with her anxiety, Shui Rui was much calmer. This matter is not urgent. I just want to tell you, not ask you to go home with me tomorrow. Grandfather is always busy with court affairs. If he remembers it today, he may not remember it tomorrow. Let's think of a countermeasure first. If he mentions it again one day, how should we reject it? Yushu hoped that Lord Shui was old and forgetful, so he would forget her immediately. But she also knew that it was impossible. Now that she was famous, everyone knew that there was a female fortune-teller in Anling City who could determine life and death. Therefore, she must find a reasonable reason to dispel the idea of Shui Rui's grandfather to let them be real brother and sister. After waking up, Yushu remembered that she forgot to tell Shui Rui something. So after washing up early, she went downstairs and knocked on Shui Rui's door. Shui Rui also woke up early. He didn't need to attend court or call the roll call today. He casually wore a loose jean robe with long sleeves covering his injured arm. He looked very leisurely. Yushu entered the door, looked him up and down, and then sat down opposite him. Big brother, I forgot to tell you, she said, 2 days after you left the capital, Zhu Qingjue came to see you and told you about the 10th princess. Yushu repeated what Zhu Qingjue said that day. He recalled 2 clues about the unknown man. First, before 10th princess had the accident, she asked Zhu Qingjue to help her collect a set of precious chess records. It seemed that she wanted to give it to her sweetheart. Second, about 1 or 2 months after the hibiscus gentleman's banquet, 10th Princess copied a poem and asked Zhu Qingjue to evaluate it. The poem was written by a man who was suspected to be the person 10th Princess liked. Here, this is it, Yushu said. She took out the paper from Zhu Qingjue and handed it to Shui Rui. Looking at Wei Xiaobao's expression, she continued, Zhu Gongzi said that he suspected you were the one who wrote this sour thing. I made a bet with him that if it was really you, I would eat this piece of paper. Tell me, did you write it? Shui Rui raised his head and looked at her smiling face, and he had a very strong premonition that if he dared to nod, she would turn hostile towards him in the next moment, and she might even stuff this piece of paper into his mouth. Of course I didn't write it, he said without hesitation. Yushu's eyes curved. She leaned back in the chair and her tone became light. I knew it wasn't you. The alarm was lifted. Shui Rui's scalp loosened. Seeing her proud look, he shook his head and smiled. He carefully read the poem again and said, the person who wrote this poem should be a young man who was proficient in literature and ink. He had passed the imperial examination and was already an official when he wrote. He was a bit gentle, but he had no lack of ambition. Seeing him infer this from a few lines, Yushu twirled her fingers and asked, do you think of anyone? Shui Rui pondered for a moment and nodded. There is one person I suspected before. He seems to have this kind of style. Yushu's eyes brightened. Is he good at chess? Yes. Yushu banged the table and said excitedly, then what are you waiting for? It's him. Hurry up, find the bad man who seduced the 10th princess and find out the truth of little sister Shui being framed. Let Shui Rui put this matter down as soon as possible. Shui Rui, however, had a slightly hesitant expression on his face as he said, he doesn't seem like the type of person who would rape a princess or commit crimes. Hey, the word villain is not written on my face. Do I look like a villain to you? Yushu pointed to her nose and asked him. Shui Rui stared at her and said, stop it. She always thought of herself as a villain, but he never thought so. In his eyes, the so-called gentlemen of the world were not as loyal as she was. Yushu put down her hand and said, then tell me, who do you suspect? Shui Rui said, Imperial Secretary of the Hall of Civil Glory, Kong Qi. Yushu had never heard of this name. What does this Imperial Secretary do? What rank is he? The Hall of Civil Glory has always been the place where the Crown Prince studied. The position of Imperial Secretary, as the name suggests, is to accompany the Crown Prince in his studies. Because the Emperor has not yet conferred the title of Crown Prince, in recent years, the Hall of Civil Glory has gradually become the place where the Emperor writes his essays. Every spring and autumn festival, the Emperor will discuss politics in the Hall of Civil Glory and test the literary talents of the princes. Kong Qi was a third-grade Tanhua. His ancestor was a branch of the Emperor Kong family. His family's knowledge is profound and his literary talent is excellent. 2 years ago, an exception was made and he was promoted to a 5th-grade Imperial Secretary. Now he is the Emperor's pen. Yushu raised her eyebrows as she listened. Why did she feel that this fellow surnamed Kong was like the kind of bookish pretty boy that princesses and princesses would fall in love with at first sight and want to die? Are you familiar with him? Shui Rui pursed his lips and said, we have some dealings. He had some admiration for Kong Qi. Now that he was suddenly regarded as the culprit behind the 10th princess's suicide, he really could not match up. Yushu rubbed her chin and suggested, how about this, don't rush to a conclusion. Let's test him first. Anyway, he is right there, so don't worry about him running away. Shui Rui looked up at her. Can you divine this matter? I can find out Kong Qi's date of birth and horoscope. Yushu spread her hands. Do you think I haven't thought about it? My time of calamity spell can only infer that the 10th princess's sexual intercourse is related to that villain. 6 lines is feasible, but in order to divine the relationship between a man and a woman, in the case of the 10th princess, we need to know the date she met that man. As the Eye of Yao, only then can we divine the details. How would Shui Rui know on which day the 10th princess had hooked up with that man? In this matter, it would be of no use even if he made a divination. Therefore the Yi Shui Rui was not a panacea. Hearing this, Shui Rui did not look too disappointed. After thinking for a while, he said, let's talk about it after I see him. This time Yushu did not rush him. Shui Rui was smarter than her. With these clues in hand, if he went to investigate that Kong Qi, as long as there was something wrong with him, there was no need to worry that he would not give himself away. After the two finished discussing business, they called the maidservant outside to serve breakfast. After the meal, Yushu planned to go home. Thinking that he had not visited for a long time, Shui Rui went with her. However, before the two left, a guest came to Wangji Tower. And one that he had to see. Greetings to Prince Jing. Miss Lianfang, please rise. Lu Tan came to find him without a greeting. Yushu was surprised, but Shui Rui was not surprised. Although the case in Pei County was kept secret, what should be heard would eventually be heard. Moreover, the night before yesterday, Prince Ning and the 11th prince entered the palace and made a ruckus. How could Lu Tan not inquire about it? Lu Tan was already patient enough to come to find him a day later. Ashu, didn't you want to go home? I have some things to discuss with Wangya. Let Guiqi take you back. Shui Rui sat by Lu Tan's side and said to Yushu. Yushu was about to take the opportunity to leave when Lu Tan raised his hand to stop her. There is no hurry. The matter that Biao Xiong and I want to discuss has something to do with Miss Lianfang. Why don't you stay a bit longer? Yushu glanced at Shui Rui, and when she saw Shui Rui didn't say anything, she complied and sat opposite the two of them. She sized up Lu Tan's expression as usual as she pondered over the reason for his arrival today. Lu Tan looked at the two and said, I heard that 7th Imperial Brother and 11th Imperial Brother are suspected of assassinating the Imperial Envoy. Biao Xiong personally went to Pei County to investigate this case. Is this true? When Shui Rui heard this question, he knew that Shui Lingnan was not going to tell Lu Tan the inside story of the entire matter. Otherwise he would not need to ask him right now. His grandfather would have hinted to Lu Tan in advance. Thus, Shui Rui told Lu Tan what he had said about Guo Huaiyan and the Emperor. Hearing this, Lu Tan's eyes sparkled. He turned his head to look at Yushu. There was just the right amount of curiosity on his face. Miss Lianfang's death sentence technique is indeed amazing. When will this prince have the opportunity to experience it? Yushu was not inferior to Shui Rui in putting on an act. She could tell that Shui Rui had no intention of telling Lu Tan the truth. She smiled bitterly and said, Your Highness, you may not know this, but this death sentence technique cannot be used casually. Originally, it could only be used after 30 days. This time, I made an exception and divined the murderer of Zhou Darren. In the end, I brought upon myself a fatal disaster. That murderer snuck into my room in the middle of the night and attempted to assassinate me. Fortunately, Shuedage was very careful and I was able to escape this calamity. This time this is also a warning. It is my fault for not listening to Shizhuan's instructions. In the future, I won't dare to use it carelessly. It is a pity. On the surface, Lu Tan believed Yushu's words. But what he thought in his heart was uncertain. Assassinating an imperial envoy is a grave crime. Why would 7th Imperial Brother and 11th Younger Brother disobey for no reason? I think that there is more to this than meets the eye. Perhaps both of them were wrongly accused. Biao Xiong, what do you think? When Yushu heard Lu Tan's words, she was somewhat disapproving. With Lu Tan's current situation, it was obvious that he wanted nothing more than for Lu Hao and Lu Yi, his two competitors, to be implicated. Yet, he had to speak up for them in such a dignified manner. Wasn't it hypocritical to do so in front of Shui Rui? Faced with Lu Tan's probing, Shui Rui only shook his head. This case has already been taken over by Guidaran. Ning Wang and 11th Imperial Prince both claim to have been framed. As for who is right and who is wrong, it is still not clear. It is all my fault for making a mistake and killing the murderer. Otherwise, with a witness, it would be easier to handle. Guidaran has always been fair and impartial. I believe that he will find out the truth and prove 7th Imperial Brother and 11th Younger Brother's innocence. Lu Tan sighed and once again turned his gaze to Yushu. Ben Wang still has a private matter that needs to ask Miss. I don't dare. Please speak, Wang Yi. Lu Tan asked, I heard that you have a good relationship with Xiajiang Xiaojia? This Xiajiang Xiaojia was naturally referring to Lu Tan's fiancée, Xiajiang Min. Yushu honestly said, Wang Yi is talking about Xiajiang's 5th Xiaojia. She and I are indeed good friends. It wasn't a secret that she had gone to Xiajiang's guest house several times and exchanged letters with Xiajiang Min. Chapter 567. When Lu Tan returned to the guest house, he went straight to the west wing. Helan Cho had been waiting in the hall for a long time. Seeing him return, he put down the chess bowl and stood. Wang Yi has returned. How did the investigation go? Lu Tan replied, We have confirmed it. Biao Xiong found 2 pieces of evidence on the body of the assassin. One was a secret letter with Lu Yi's personal seal, and the other was the death warrior waist token of Ning Wang Fu. Fu Huang was really angry and ordered the Judicial Office of Justice, Guo Huaiyan, to investigate the case. He then told him what Shui Rui had said, including how Yushu had gone to Pei County to help. Heelan Cho considered and said, "Of these two, one must be the main culprit and the other has been framed. On the surface, it is more likely that the 11th prince has acted, but this kind of method seems to be the work of Ning Wang." Lu Tan furrowed his brows. "I have a doubt. If Ning Wang acts, then it would be Lu Yi whom he has schemed against. But Lu Yi has always followed his lead and has never fought with him. Even if Ning Wang is wary of the power of the Lu family, I'm afraid that Lu Yi will grow ambitious in the future. Wouldn't it be too early to act now?" Heelan Chao's eyes flashed in deep thought. He said in a light voice, "What if Xiang Zhuang wielded his sword and had other plans?" "What does Mr. Heelan mean?" "Wang Yi should think about it. If eldest Shui Gongzi only captured the murderer and found the secret letter on his body, but did not find the death warrior token, what would the result be?" Lu Tan was taken aback for a moment, but he quickly understood and his complexion changed. "If that happened, it would be the Shui family and the Lu family fighting," he said in a low voice, "and someone would be able to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight." Heelan Cho sighed lightly. Ning Wang is a good schemer, but it was a pity that it failed at the last moment. A variable like the female fortune teller appeared. Eldest Shui Gongzi had the help of a benefactor and unintentionally broke the trap. If he hadn't killed the culprit, it would be a different situation. Lu Tan nodded with some relief. Even though he felt something was wrong, he couldn't put it into words and threw it to the back of his mind. In short, he was happy to see the present situation. According to Mr. Since Ning Wang and Lu Yi have been implicated and the case has been handed to Guidarin, and Weiza did not warn me, there is no need for me to act. Let me just watch. Heelan Cho smiled and turned to ask, "Wang Yi met the female fortune teller, did he mention the future Wang Fei to her?" "Yes." Lu Tan's expression turned indifferent. Apparently he wasn't in the mood to talk about this matter. Heelan Cho tactfully stopped asking. At the end of the month, the construction of the Wang residence will be completed. The Secretariat has chosen a good date for the moving on the 15th of next month. The guest list is being drafted and will be sent to you tomorrow. If there is anything inappropriate, we will change it. At the end of the month, the Wang Fu will be completed. The Secretariat will choose a good date. The moving will be on the 15th of next month. The guest list is being drafted and will be sent tomorrow for Mr. to look over. If there is anything inappropriate, we will change it. Heelan Cho acknowledged. After the double sun gathering in the 3rd month, he officially became a guest of Lu Tan and moved into the guest house. With his knowledge and eloquence, he gradually gained Lu Tan's trust and attention. Prince Jing's actions are quite interesting. Before the wedding, he wanted to see the female and asked us to accompany him. This isn't considered a private meeting, right? Shui Rui smiled. He was clearly aware of Lu Tan's thoughts, and he didn't speak it out because he didn't want to add to Yushu's worries. Shui Rui followed Yushu to the south of the city. He didn't go home directly but went to Hifangji's medical center first. Shui Rui's knife wound wasn't shallow. Even though it had been stitched up in Pei County and applied with the best wound dressing, Yushu was still worried. She felt that it would be best if Hifangji took a look at it herself. She didn't think too much about it. With the power of the Shui family, it would only take a word for them to invite an imperial physician to make a house call. There was a sign outside the medical center that was bestowed by the emperor. People came and went during the day. There were 3 extra workers in the front hall to fill up the medicine. There was also a smaller one who stood on his tiptoes behind the counter and used a copper scale to measure the medicine. When Shui Rui saw the child, he turned to ask Yushu, "Why is Xiaoxiu here?" Yushu also found it strange. Today wasn't Mu Xiu's day. Why wasn't Yu Xiaoxiu at school in the morning? Why was he here? Xiaoxiu. Yu Xiaoxiu was counting the medicinal herbs when he suddenly heard Yushu's voice. He looked up and saw Shui Rui walking with him. He grinned and said, "Sister, brother Shui, why are you here?" Yushu reached out and knocked on his head. She said with a stern face, "I want to ask you, why are you here instead of going to school? Are you playing truant?" She allowed him to follow Hifangji to study medicine, but she didn't allow him to delay his studies. Of course not. Teacher Chen, who is teaching today, is sick. The academician saw that the weather is hot, so he allowed us to go home. Yu Xiaoxiu quickly denied it. He was afraid that Yushu wouldn't believe him, so he pointed to the little fatty who was squatting at the foot of the wall and playing cricket. "Look, Hu Tianer followed me here. You can ask him." Yushu hadn't seen the young master of the Hu family for a while. When she saw him today, she almost couldn't recognize him. "Hu Tianer?" Hearing Yushu's voice, Hu Tianer turned his face. When he saw them, he scratched his head and turned to greet them. "Sister Yu, brother Shui." Shui Rui touched his head. Hu Tian'er was Guo Huayan's grandson, so they were naturally familiar with each other. According to Yu Xiaoxiu, He Fangji was helping someone set a bone in the back hall, so he couldn't leave for a while. Shui Rui and Yu Shu were waiting outside. Yu Xiaoxiu stopped working. He moved chairs for them and sat at the corner of the counter to talk. Brother Shui, what's wrong with your hand? Yu Xiaoxiu quickly found that Shui Rui's left hand was inconvenient. Your brother Shui was fighting with a murderer and was slashed by the murderer. His arm was almost cut off. Yu Shu said alarmingly. Facing the frightened eyes of the two teenagers, Shui Rui looked at Yu Shu helplessly and said to Yu Xiaoxiu, "It's just a cut. Your sister is just trying to scare you. I'm telling the truth. How can it be a scare?" Yu Shu pulled Yu Xiaoxiu over and said, "You've been learning from Godfather these days. Have you learned how to see, listen, ask and feel the pulse? Go and feel the pulse for your brother Shui." Yu Xiaoxiu stood still and said dryly, "Sister, I just learned how to distinguish medicine. I haven't recognized all the acupoints yet. I don't know how to read the pulse." Yu Shu pinched his face and scolded with a smile, "You're so useless." Yu Xiaoxiu chuckled, but he wasn't angry. Shui Rui looked at the siblings with doubts in his heart. He Fangji was free and went outside to greet them. After hearing from Yu Shu about Shui Rui's injury, he invited him to a quiet place in the back hall and examined him. Fortunately, the wound has been cleaned and there is no inflammation. The wound has been sutured in time. There is no injury to the muscles and bones. It's not a big problem. Take care and rest for 2 months. The skin and flesh will grow back. He Fangji said what Yu Shu could understand. He also asked Shui Rui what kind of medicine he had taken in the past 2 days. Yu Shu told him the prescription and he corrected a few medicinal materials. Yu Xiaoxiu took a pen and paper and wrote it down. Finally, he told Shui Rui to eat a few daily taboos and tonics. When Shui Rui and Yu Shu came out of the clinic, Shui Rui asked her, "When did Xiaoxiu learn medicine?" Yu Shu said, "He likes it, so I let him learn it. He is still young. He has to study and learn medicine. Will it be too tiring for him to learn E from you?" Shui Rui knew that Yu Shu sent Yu Xiaoxiu to Baichuan Academy to learn some basic principles. She must want him to inherit it in the future. Yu Shu spread out her hands, "So if he wants to learn medicine, I don't need to teach him E. He chose it himself." Hearing this, Shui Rui was surprised. Hearing Yu Shu say it so easily, it seemed that it was just a trivial thing. But in fact, how could the inheritance of E be a trivial thing? Moreover, Yu Shu was a young, unmarried woman who possessed the art of disguise. She didn't have any descendants, and she had a younger brother who was related to her by blood. Instead of personally teaching him, she allowed him to study medicine. In the eyes of outsiders, this was simply inconceivable. More importantly, he had a sister like Yu Shu. Compared with learning medicine, Yu Xiaoxiu had a better future in E. Shui Rui hesitated. Xiaoxiu is still young. Maybe he is stubborn. Didn't you persuade him? Yu Shu walked beside him with her hands behind her back. She turned her head and looked at him. Is 12 years old still young? Let me see. When the second son of the Zhu family ran away from home, he was only 14 or 15. His father was the current Dadiang. As the only son, Zhu Qingjue still learned medicine, didn't he? Speaking of which, the reason why she agreed to help Zhu Qingjue that day when he came to her for help was that she saw similarities between Zhu Qingjue and Yu Xiaoxiu. That was why she was soft-hearted. I know what you're thinking, big bro. I'm someone who can do what others can't. My skills were originally supposed to be passed on to little Xiu, but he has other ambitions, so I don't want to force him and make him unhappy. He's my little brother, and I'm happy to see him succeed, but even if he doesn't accomplish anything in his life, he'll still be my little brother. On this point, she had to admit that she appreciated Detidian's character. From the fact that Zhu Qingjue was able to smoothly become his second young master Zhu instead of being like Xan Laowu, who was expelled from the family by his old man and had to sullenly hole up in a fan shop, she could see this. After listening to her words, Shui Rui couldn't help but stop and look at her deeply. "Shu, you always think more clearly than others." At this moment he was very envious of Yu Xiaoxiu. Blood kinship should be like this. "Are you praising me?" Yu Shu raised her eyebrows at him. "I am telling the truth." "Ah, I like to hear the truth." Shui Rui tilted his head and smiled at her. "Is it because you like to lie?" Yu Shu was speechless. They walked on the street, keeping a distance of 2 feet from each other. It was not too close or too far, just enough to hear each other clearly. From this angle, the informant who followed them during the day couldn't see any intimacy between them at all. When he reported it to his superior, He would only say that the female mathematician and eldest young master Shui went to the clinic together today. Celestial Commissioner outside Taishi Tower, it was as quiet as ever. Jing Chen was summoned. After listening to the words of his superior, his calm face showed a frown. Zhu Muzhao looked at him and said with a kind expression, "Don't worry too much. I originally wanted a young Master Yi with no family background to take this position. Coincidentally, there is a suitable candidate like you, Swansea. Moreover, you are the substitute right commander. In the future you will be the boss and the subordinate in the same bureau. You will see each other frequently. It is better than not having a chance to get close to her." Jing Chen was silent for a while and nodded slowly. However, there was no joy on his face. Zhu Muzhao knew that he was not a happy person, so he didn't care. He smiled and said, Chapter 568. Every Friday, July and September, there would be Fang Zijing's lectures. Yu Shu went to Pei County on the evening of the 19th and stayed there for a few days. It didn't affect her studies. Today was the 25th of June, and there were morning classes. Yu Shu lived at home for the past 2 days and didn't go to Wangji Tower. Shui Rui seemed to have something to do, so the two were separated again. This time, Shui Rui was schemed against by the hypocrite Lu Hao and almost fell into his trap. Yu Shu thought that he had encountered too many shady cases, so he was unlucky. She wanted to give him the peachwood black silk fan in advance, but when she turned her head she couldn't find him, so she had to give up. Yu Shu slept well last night. When she got up in the morning she was in high spirits. She didn't let the groom send her off and went out with Little Red. If Shui Rui knew that she dared to ride alone on the street after riding a horse only 2 or 3 times, he would definitely teach her a lesson. Fortunately, Little Red was indeed a fine colt that Pei Jing had carefully selected from the northern stud farm. It had a gentle temperament and was neither arrogant nor rash. When it was pulled onto the streets by Yu Shu, a rash newbie, it did not panic at all. It calmly trotted along the road, avoiding pedestrians and avoiding people. If someone told it to go east, it would never go west. Thus, one person and one horse strolled without taking any detours. They smoothly passed through the south of the city to the north of the city and came to the street in front of the main entrance of Taisher Library. Yu Shu got off the horse when they were almost at the door. She held the reins, stroked the horse's neck and said with a smile, "How was it? I rode it well, right?" Little Red didn't understand Yu Shu's words, so it shook its head and ignored her. Animals were not allowed to enter Taisher Library. Yu Shu had asked Xen Lu before and knew that they could leave the horse in the tea house and tavern across the street. There was good feed there, but it cost 1 silver tael a day, which was a lot of money. She was about to take the horse to deposit it when she heard someone calling her. She looked up and saw a young man with a round face sitting by the window on the 2nd floor of the tea house with a smile. He was waving at her. "Miss you." "Really?" Even though there was a distance between them, Yu Shu could still recognize that this person was one of Shui Rui's good friends, the young noble of the Earl's mansion, Rui Lin. Yu Shu led the horse a few steps closer. Raising her head she asked, "Master Rui, why are you here so early in the morning?" Rui Lin leaned half of his body out of the window and said to her, "I couldn't find you, so I came here to wait. If you're not busy, why don't you come up for a cup of tea?" Yu Shu hesitated for a moment, but seeing that it was still early she agreed. At the beginning of the year, an imperial notice was put up in the capital looking for the whereabouts of Jing Chen, the Taoist. She was arrested by the Celestial Commissioner for interrogation. In the end, it was Ruilin who broke into the Celestial Commissioner's house with Shui Rui to save her, relying on his identity as the brother-in-law of Junior Supervisor Ren. Yu Shu owed him a favor, so she would definitely give him some face. However, when she went upstairs she realized that Ruilin did not come alone today. Yu Shu and Rui Zizhu, who was disguised as a man, sat face to face. A few hot and fragrant tea snacks were placed in the middle, and there was also a slender brocade box. Ruilin had just found an excuse to leave. "Miss you I?" Under the table Rui Zizhu clutched her sleeves. The courage that she had summoned with great difficulty weakened again when she saw Yu Shu. Yu Shu frowned without a trace. "Miss Rui, if you have something to say, you might as well say it. I have a lecture in the study garden in the morning, so I have to leave in a while." She owed Ruilin a favor, but she didn't owe this little girl. Rui Zizhu's behavior at the Hibiscus Gentleman's Banquet, so she didn't argue with her anymore. This little girl should thank the gods for daring to show up in front of her. Yu Shu hated this kind of person the most. "I didn't provoke you, but you provoked me. It would be strange if I forgive you. I specially came to apologize to you." Rue Zizhu lowered her head and pushed the brocade box on the table to Yu Shu. She said in a low voice, "That night at the banquet, I mistakenly believed Royal Princess Shi Wen and joined them to spread rumors about you. I was really muddle-headed for a moment. I hope you don't blame me." Hearing this, Yu Shu didn't even look at her apology. She just waved her hand and said, "That happened so many days ago. I'm not that narrow-minded, so I don't blame you." Anyway, she didn't lose anything, but they were the ones who lost face. Rue Zizhu probably didn't expect Yu Shu to be so easy to talk to. Her thick eyelashes fluttered and her face lit up. "You really don't blame me?" "Yes." Yu Shu only wanted to quickly get rid of the person, so she didn't care about going along with her words. Rue Zizhu breathed a sigh of relief. "Miss Yu, you don't know. When I went back that day, older brother scolded me. I wanted to apologize to you in person, but, she hesitantly said, Royal Princess Shi Wen invited me over. She told me that you are a very vengeful person and will take revenge for any grievances. She told me to be careful of you." Yu Shu drank the tea. She raised her eyes and looked at the person opposite her. She thought that this little girl was a simple-minded person, but she didn't expect that she had misjudged her. Rue Zizhu panicked under her gaze. She pursed her lips and braced herself. I think you're a bad person. Otherwise, eldest young Master Shui wouldn't have recognized you as his sworn sister." Yu Shu curled up the corner of her mouth and didn't continue. Seeing her smile, Rue Zizhu seemed to be encouraged and said in a spurt of energy, "If Miss Yu doesn't blame me, can you do me a favor?" She was taking advantage of the situation. Yu Shu asked, "What is it?" "I know that eldest young Master Shui's birthday is on the 9th of next month, so I want to give him something, but I don't know what he likes. Miss Yu, you are close, so you must know what he likes. Can you help me give me some ideas?" Normally, it was a taboo for men and women to give things to each other in private, but it wasn't a problem for a proper birthday gift. Rue Zizhu was shy, but she still brought it up. Yu Shu almost laughed out loud. What kind of nonsense was this? A girl liked her boyfriend, and in order to please him, she actually came to her rival in love to give him ideas. Many people believed that she and Shui Rue were siblings, so the two of them could only pretend that they didn't know anything. Should she bear with it and help Rue Zizhu come up with an idea? Not good. Yu Shu crossed her arms and said with a slightly mocking expression, "I don't have a good relationship with you, so why should I help you? Give him whatever you like, why ask me?" Shui Rue was her boyfriend. Even if no one knew, it was a fact, so why should she bear it? Regardless of Rue Zizhu's stunned expression, Yu Shu lost her patience and got up to leave. "It's time. I won't wait for Brother Ling, I'll leave first." After that, she turned and went downstairs. As for the box of apology on the table, she didn't look at it again. Rue Zizhu bit her lip and didn't try to persuade her to stay. Seeing that she had left, Rue Lin came out from behind a screen and sat next to her. He shook his head and said, "I already said that this Yu Shu isn't easy to get along with. Don't look at her friendly face. When it's time to be rude, she won't be polite at all. You're just asking for trouble by looking for her like this. I think you should just wait for father and the Shui family to discuss the marriage. Don't let your imagination run wild all day long." Rue Zizhu turned her head and stammered, "Miss Yu and young Master Shui, are they really just sworn siblings? How can it be fake? Brother Rue said it himself. How can he lie about this?" Rue Lin looked at her strangely and guessed her thoughts. He laughed and said, "I told you not to let your imagination run wild. Brother Rue likes a beauty like the 10th princess. Why would he have any thoughts about Miss Yu? Isn't Miss Yu a beauty? Didn't brother see her at the gentleman's hibiscus banquet? When she dressed like that, she overshadowed me and Princess Shi Wen. Sister Mingyue didn't come that night. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been in the limelight." Rue Zizhu said sourly. She couldn't forget that night when Shui Rue was singing a poem about a beauty. At the end, he couldn't take his eyes off of the person he was staring at. This. Rue Lin couldn't find a rebuttal. He thought to himself, Yu Lianfang is such a powerful person. Even if she's a beauty, how many men can stand her? Of course, he couldn't say this to his younger sister, so he went against his conscience and comforted her. "Brother will guarantee you that Shui Rue will never have an affair with Miss Yu. Think about it, how can they be a match? What kind of family does the Shui family have? Even if she's a female fortune teller who can determine life and death, she doesn't have any background and only has an empty title. How can she be worthy of the young master of the Shui family?" Rue Zizhu's beautiful face revealed a smile. She held her cheek and turned her head to look at the figure leaving downstairs. She thought to herself, "Fortunately, I'm the young lady of the Count's mansion. I was born better than some people." After class, Yu Shu and Situ Qinglan went to the female dormitory to get their books. She hadn't appeared in Taisher Library for the past few days. The students who were curious about her didn't manage to catch her. After a few times they lost their patience and didn't come to her class. On the way they met Xen Lu, who was walking in the opposite direction. When he finally saw her, Xen Lu hurried forward and complained, "Lian Feng, where have you been hiding these past few days? I couldn't find you anywhere. It's my grandfather's birthday in 2 days. I accepted an errand to deliver an invitation to you." It seemed that the news of Ning Wang and Lu Yi killing the imperial envoy had not spread. "I had something to do outside the city." Yu Shu didn't elaborate. She stretched out her hand and asked, "Where's the invitation? Give it to me." Xan Lu really did have it on her. She took it out and shoved it to her. She asked worriedly, "You will come?" Yu Shu took the hard-covered invitation and patted her shoulder. She smiled and said, "Wait for me at the gates. Then I'll go." Xen Lu grinned, "Then it's a deal." Situ Qinglan looked enviously at the two of them chatting. After exchanging a few words, Xen Lu hurriedly left, saying that the academician had instructed him to do something important. When Xen Lu had walked far away, Situ Qinglan finally said to Yu Shu, "You're amazing now. The left arbiter Darren has a birthday celebration and specially sent an invitation to you. For my birthday next month, I'm too embarrassed to call you." Yu Shu casually picked up the gold-stamped invitation. She turned her head and smiled, asking, "Am I that snobbish? What day is it?" July 21st. When Yu Shu heard that she didn't want to interrupt Shui Rui's birthday, she nodded and said, "If you invite me, I will definitely go." Chapter 569. After a good night's sleep, Shui Rui woke up early. The first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was the fan hanging at the head of the bed. Under the green mountains in the distance, there was a yellow river flowing quietly. The river was shallow and there was fine sand on the shore. A white shadow was faintly discernible, like a horse drinking under the moon. This was the scene he added to the bottom of the fan after he came back last night. It was the scene of the river that he and Yu Shu had seen last night. After a night, the ink was dried. Shui Rui sat up from the bed, took off the fan and admired it for a while. Then he called Hataku, who was outside the door, to fetch water to wash up. After he changed his clothes, Shui Rui held the fan in his hand and gestured in front of the mirror. He looked at the man with a dignified appearance who was holding the dark gold fan in the mirror. He felt that even though he had collected so many fans, none of them could compare to this Mujiang fan. "Young master, you bought a new fan. Which family's handmade? Look at the good quality." Hataku had a good eye. He was the one who kept Shui Rui's clothes. When he saw the new fan in his hand, he knew that it was not a common thing. "TSK, such an exquisite thing. Only men like me are worthy of it." Shui Rui smiled and closed the fan. He was about to knock his head, but when he was about to knock his head, he retracted his hand and caressed it lovingly. "Don't be talkative. I told you to keep an eye on the door. If a lady comes to look for me, reply as soon as possible." "Yes, yes." Shui Rui sat down and ate his breakfast. When he thought that it was about time for someone to arrive, he saw Baoda jogging back and panting as he told him that someone had arrived. Shui Rui arrived in front of the entrance. Just like yesterday, Jiang Rui was wearing clothes made of coarse cloth, and she wore a large conical bamboo hat that covered her face. She had a tall and slender figure, and when she stood far away, it was utterly impossible to tell that she was a woman. "You're here." Seeing him, Jiang crossed her arms and raised her chin. "Do you want to go in or talk somewhere else?" Shui Rui said, "Let's go somewhere else." Last night he promised Yu Shu to be present when he met Jiang. Hence, he led Jiang to the Forgotten Opportunity Tower. Because they took 2 sedan chairs, there was no conversation on the way. Yu Shu had been waiting for them in Wangji Tower. After Jiang followed Shui Rui into the building, she looked around and commented, "This place is good, but it's a little narrow." Shui Rui saw the maid standing outside the hall on the first floor. He knew that Yu Shu was here, so he led Jiang in. Hearing the voice outside the door, Yu Shu put away the money on the table and looked outside. The first to enter the room was Shui Rui. When their eyes met, both of them recalled the scene on the river last night, and their hearts were filled with sweetness. Due to the fact that there were still people behind him, Shui Rui restrained the dense look in his eyes. "You?" Jiang came in and saw Yu Shu. She recognized her as the one she met at the gate of the Shui family last night. She frowned and looked at Shui Rui. "Who is she? Why is she here?" Shui Rui introduced her to them. "Shu is my sworn sister. She is not an outsider. She knows that I have stayed in the northeast." Jiang raised his thick eyebrows and looked at Yushu with a scrutinizing gaze. Yushu stood up with a smile and nodded. I'm Yushu. Nice to meet you, Commandery Princess Chunwei. After taking off the bamboo hat, Jiang's facial features looked even more handsome. She was 1 or 2 years older than Yushu and they were both tall women. Yushu was slender while Jiang exuded a vigorous aura. When Jiang heard how Yushu addressed her, she knew that Shui Rui must have mentioned her to her last night. She curled up the corners of her mouth slightly and ignored him. Instead, she turned to Shui Rui and said, "Doesn't that mean my brother Wang also has an adopted sister?" Shui Rui paused. Seeing Yushu's confusion, he told her, "Prince of Dongjing and I are sworn brothers. He is the elder brother and I am the younger brother." Since Shui Rui had sworn an oath of brotherhood, he did not need to go through Jiang Huaying. In the future, he would also acknowledge Yushu as his younger sister. Yushu saw the displeasure on Jiang's face as if she had gotten a great bargain. She rolled her eyes and cursed in her heart. Sworn brother and sister? She didn't want to. Jiang was just unhappy, but she did not make things difficult for Yushu. She picked a chair opposite Yushu and sat down with her legs spread out. Yushu saw that her actions did not bother with trifles and had the air of a Jianghu woman. Although she was also a Junju, she was very different from Shiwen's delicate appearance. Shui Rui also sat down. In his own territory he didn't have to worry about talking. He asked Jiang, "Does your brother know that you are in the capital?" "Why? Do you think I sneaked out?" Jiang sneered at him. "Without my brother's permission, how can I leave Ningdong City?" Shui Rui was thinking. "Don't think about it," Jiang said. "The emperor is afraid of the 200,000 troops in the northeast. He is afraid that my brother will rebel one day. So he ordered mother and me to go to the capital as hostages." Such treasonous words were spoken casually by her and Shui Rui frowned. He actually didn't hear the slightest hint of the emperor's actions. Of course he won't say it so directly. He used the empress's mouth to summon us to the capital. A few generations ago there was an empress in the Jiang family. Coincidentally, she was related to the current empress, Rui. In terms of seniority, Jiang could call Rui aunt. Such a distant relationship was used as an excuse. The emperor's intention was clear. Jiang and her mother, Madame Wei, either came to the capital obediently or they didn't. The Jiang Huaying was disloyal. In this case, before Jiang and her mother entered the capital, it was indeed not good to make this matter public. Otherwise, someone with evil intentions could set up an ambush on the way. If anything happened to Prince of Dongjing's mother and sister, it would be a disaster. "You just arrived in the capital yesterday. Where is old madam?" "Mother is still on the way. She will arrive soon. I got rid of the escort team last night and came first. Imperial brother has a secret letter for me to hand to you personally." Jiang completely ignored Yushu, who was also present. When she spoke, she didn't hide anything. She took a bamboo tube from her waist and threw it to Shui Rui. Shui Rui raised his hand to catch it. He unscrewed the bamboo tube and took out Jiang Huaying's handwritten letter. He saw that there was a layer of wax on it. He looked up at Jiang. Jiang coldly snorted, "Don't worry. I didn't open it. I don't know what was written on it." Shui Rui's eyes flashed. He knew that Jiang Huaying's action clearly told him that the contents of the letter should not be revealed to Jiang. He lowered his head to read the letter. Jiang then moved her eyes to Yushu. Last night they met in front of the door. She just thought that she was a passerby and didn't take it to heart. Now that she looked at her, she didn't look like the little girls who surrounded Shui Rui in the past. She looked gentle and quiet. She wasn't beautiful at all, but she was in good spirits. "Are you Yushu?" Yushu was also scrutinizing Jiang. Seeing that she suddenly spoke, she hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yes." "How old are you?" 16. Jiang smiled at her, and her expression softened. She was no longer as cold as she had been to her before. "I'm a year older than you. You look pleasing to the eye. You can call me sister." Chapter 570. Yushu had to admit that she was a narrow-minded person. She still remembered how Jiang had snatched something from her last night. Even if Jiang had taken the initiative to express her goodwill, she didn't like to be led by the nose. "Thank you for your kindness, princess, but I'm the eldest sister at home. I'm used to being the eldest and don't like to call others elder sister or elder brother. You stole my things when you were in a good mood, and when you were in a good mood you called me elder sister and younger sister. You're quite magnanimous, but I'm a vengeful person. I have to be willing to do everything." Jiang's smile disappeared. She looked at Yushu, who had tactfully rejected her good intentions, and her voice also turned cold. If that's the case, then can you call Xue Qingbi elder brother? Xue Rui had just finished reading Jiang Huaying's private letter when he suddenly heard Jiang mention his name. He looked up and saw the calm expression on Yushu's face. Elder brother Xue and I have been through thick and thin together. We can talk about life and death together. Of course we're different. Xue Rui's heart skipped a beat. He folded the letter and was about to say something when he heard a hearty laugh beside him. "Ha, you're a little stubborn. You're not like those despicable people who fawn on the rich and powerful. I like you more and more." Yushu also smiled. She didn't dislike this Princess Jiang's straightforward temper. Xue Rui saw the two girls talking back and forth. They were full of hostility just now, but now they were smiling. He could only sigh inwardly at the fickle nature of women. "I finished reading it. What did Brother Wang say in the letter?" Jiang asked Xue Rui. Xue Rui put the letter away and said to her, "Your elder brother asked me to watch over you in the capital so that you don't cause trouble." Jiang didn't think much of it. "I won't attack unless I'm attacked." Xue Rui knew it was useless to remind her, so he didn't say anything more. Jiang Huaying must have told her everything before they came. Besides, Madame Wei was also here. In fact, Jiang Huaying's letter not only asked him to take care of Jiang, but also told him that a mole had infiltrated Prince Dongjing's mansion in Ningdong City. It was no longer safe for him and Xue Rui to pass the message privately. Therefore, he didn't send a letter to Xue Rui in advance. Instead, he asked Jiang to bring a letter to him. "Where will you stay, princess? Why don't you stay here before Madame Wei arrives?" Yushu suggested. "All right," Jiang readily agreed. She then said, "Xue Dalong, this is my first time coming to the capital. Shouldn't you show your hospitality as a host?" Xue Rui didn't really want Jiang to stay at his place, but since Yushu spoke first, it wasn't good for him to refuse. So he nodded and said Jiang was happy. She patted the armrest and stood up. "I'm going back to the inn to get the horses. Wait for me." Jiang was delighted. She patted the armrest and stood up, saying, "I'm going back to the inn to get the horses. Wait for me." Seeing her leave, Xue Rui turned and said to Yushu, "I'm going back to the inn to get the horses. Wait for me." After saying that, she left without waiting for Xue Rui and Jiang Huaying to send her off. Jiang is a straightforward person. Although she is a bit moody, she is not a bad person. You will know after spending a few more days with her. Although she's a little moody, she's not a bad person. You'll know when you get along with her for a few days. Xue Rui coughed. "I'm not afraid of you being calculative. I'm just afraid that she'll hurt you accidentally. She's practiced martial arts since young and is used to killing. She doesn't hold back when she fights." Yushu supported her head with one hand. She wasn't scared at all. Instead, she smiled and said, "All right, I won't provoke her." With these words of hers, Xue Rui was at ease, and he was in the mood to take out the Mu River fan in his sleeve before he opened it and shook it. Yushu's eyes lit up when she saw the additional picture on the fan. She leaned over and took the fan to take a closer look. When she saw that the picture was the river scene they swam through last night, she couldn't help but smile and praised, "It's really well drawn." There was no one outside the door. Xue Rui pulled her sleeve and pulled her to sit on his lap. He wrapped one arm around her waist and held the fan with the other. He tilted his head to look at her face and said gently, "I wanted to draw you and me on the picture. But I thought it would be too ostentatious. So I only took the river scene. Look, this white is the Magatama. The two black dots on it are you and me." As Yushu listened to his explanation, she realized that there was a small white horse by the river in the picture. There were two even smaller black dots on the horse's back. She had to move closer to her eyes to barely distinguish that it was two people. She laughed and looked down again. She leaned on Xue Rui's shoulder and said softly, "I've wronged you. We're lovers, but we can only do it secretly. We can't let outsiders know. I'm the one who wronged you." Xue Rui's eyes were deep. His chin gently touched her forehead. "If I had enough power, I could protect you so that you wouldn't have to worry about anything. But now I can only be with you step by step." Yushu only felt warm when she heard him taking care of her. How could she think that he wasn't good enough? She swept away her worries and said, "You're the young and promising Shaoqing of the Supreme Court and the eldest young master of the Xue family. Who in the younger generation of Anling City can beat you?" The eldest young master of the Xue family. Xue Rui smiled bitterly in his heart. He couldn't help holding her hand tightly. He really wanted to ask, what if he wasn't the eldest young master of the Xue family? That might not necessarily be the case. Isn't there a female fortune teller here who only appears once every 10 years, a young imperial lady? Shui Rui suppressed his impulse and spoke in a serious tone. Yu Shu sat on his lap with her back to him. She couldn't see Shui Rui's expression just now. Hearing his compliments, she was happy for a while. Then she pushed his arm away and got up from his arms. She tidied her clothes and said with a smile, "I didn't sleep well last night. I'll go upstairs and rest for a while. You wait here for Jiang." Shui Rui also slept in the middle of the night last night. But he was used to staying up late and didn't feel tired, so he let her be. Jiang Noon led the horse and returned to the Forgotten Opportunity Tower. Shui Rui instructed the servants to prepare a table full of dishes and wine. He and Yu Shu entertained her together. After the meal, Jiang was very interested in going out for a walk. But Shui Rui had to go to the Supreme Court to work. So Yu Shu naturally became her companion. Jiang changed her coarse clothes into men's clothes. She looked like a handsome young man. It was inappropriate for Yu Shu to wear a skirt and wander around with her on the street. So she also changed into a long gown in the color of green radish. The two went out. They didn't take a carriage. Instead, they strolled west along Horse Street. "Lianfang isn't your family from the capital?" During lunch, Yu Shu took the initiative to mention this name to Jiang. She didn't want Jiang to call her sister anymore. "Yes, I'm from the south. I came to the capital for the Dian examination last year," Yu Shu said, putting the cart before the horse. In fact, she was persuaded to participate in the Dian examination after she came to the capital and met Shui Rui. Jiang was surprised. "Oh, you're also a master of change?" Yu Shu nodded and didn't say much. During lunch, it was mostly Jiang and Shui Rui who were chatting with each other. She didn't interrupt and Jiang didn't ask her much. How would she know her background? Unexpectedly, Jiang's eyes lit up when she saw her nod. She pulled her and said, "Then you should know how to gamble. Let's go. Take me to a place to see what the big gambling houses in the capital look like." On the other side, the Supreme Court. Shui Rui was buried in a pile of files. Suddenly his nose felt itchy. He rubbed it and remembered something. He slapped his forehead. Chapter 571. 2 o'clock in the morning, begging for pink, okay? Yu Shu received the letter of appointment and reported to the Celestial Commissioner the next day. First, she had to go to the Taiching department to fill in her personal information, answer some messy questions from the bookkeeper such as the age of her parents, whether she was married or not, how many properties she owned and how many siblings she had. Finally, she had to sign and stamp her name. They wanted to take her personal seal, so the main point of this segment was not to lie. She had to say whatever she knew. Otherwise, if someone found out that she was lying, it would be considered a dereliction of duty. This was what Shui Rui had reminded her in advance. Yu Shu could only do as he said. Next, she had to take the acceptance letter from the Great Prefect and go to the Imperial Secretariat to register and receive her official rank token. Although this token was small, it was very useful. As long as an official was in the capital, no matter if they were attending court, dispatching subordinates, or going in and out of important places, if they didn't have this token, they could only play with mud. Therefore, it was said that many ministers with bad memories would tie their official rank tokens to their waistbands. Even if their pants fell, they could not lose the token. The reception officer of the Secretariat would also tell her her annual salary. What made Yu Shu dissatisfied was that a dignified fifth-rank official, who held an important position, only had an income of 50 taels of silver a month. It was not even as much as the money she earned from selling a stone. No wonder there were so many corrupt officials. Fortunately, in addition to the salary, he was also given rice, salt, candle oil, and the 4 seasons official uniform. This kind of welfare was complete and he could save a lot of money. After going to these 2 places, registering, getting the waist tag, listening to a lot of information and writing 7 or 8 notes, he still couldn't officially take up his post. She would have to wait from 5 days to half a month. Tai Chingxi reviewed her supplementary information. The Secretariat rushed to make her official robes so that she could go to the Kunling Bureau to be the second in command. Yu Shu entered the Celestial Commissioner's office in the morning and only came out at noon. She felt dizzy from the scorching sun above her head and regretted coming to this office. Shui Rui was waiting for her at the door. Seeing her stumbling out with a confused look, he hurriedly asked the coachman to pull her into the car. "How is it? Is everything settled?" Shui Rui handed over the tea that he had poured earlier to her. He then opened the fan to cool her down. His other hand was injured and he couldn't move it. It rested peacefully on his lap. Yu Shu panted slightly, took a sip of water and said, "It's not easy being an official." Shui Rui broke into laughter. Waving his fan, he said, "You speak as if you have been an official for many years. Didn't you just receive your appointment letter yesterday? You haven't even taken office yet, how can you sigh?" Yu Shu curled her lips and took out the waist tag and a pile of paper from her sleeves, as well as the broken charcoal pen. Shui Rui picked up a piece of paper and looked at it. On it was written hastily, 50 taels of silver, 16 dawn of rice, 30 jean of oil, 100 sticks of wax. This was obviously her monthly stipend. He picked up another piece of paper. On it was written, wake up at 5 o'clock. Eat at 7 o'clock, go to work at 9 o'clock, rest at noon, go to work at 6 o'clock. This was the schedule. Shui Rui looked up and asked, "What do you mean by going to work?" Yu Shu looked at him. "It means going to the yamen to work and earn money." Shui Rui nodded and didn't ask her why she remembered it like this. He read through the notes she had recorded one by one. Tidying them up, he took out an empty sachet from under the coffee table and put it in it. He passed it to her and said, "Actually, you will know after you take office. Although there are many Celestial Commissioner, they are not that strict. There are more than 10 people in Kunling Bureau. You can get to know them all in one day. You can leave the trivial matters to the subordinates and write down the important matters. Later you can check their progress and report to the right commander if you meet with any difficult matters." Shui Rui taught her some simple ways of being an official. He said the last sentence through clenched teeth. Yu Shu heard the last part of his words and couldn't help but laugh. She snatched the fan from his hand and fanned him a few times. She said, "Don't get angry. It's hot today. If you get angry, something bad will happen." Shui Rui was a little angry. Yesterday, when Jing Chen went to Yu Shu's house to read the appointment letter, he didn't care much about it at that time. After he went back, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. Jing Chen got the position of right commander effortlessly. After a few days in office, Yu Shu was promoted to be his subordinate. Moreover, it was the great Tiandao who accepted the appointment personally. It was obvious that he wanted to match them and create opportunities for them. He always thought that the great Tiandao of the Celestial Commissioner was an unfathomable person. His shrewdness was comparable to his grandfather's. Why didn't he realize that this person could also be like a gossipy old woman and was not unfamiliar with matchmaking? He thought that he was broad-minded. It was rare for him to criticize. Looking at Yu Shu's cheeky smile, he felt even worse. "I'm serious. Don't take it lightly," Shui Rui frowned and said, "I am not afraid that you will be soft-hearted toward Jing Chen. I am worried that if you continue to have a smooth journey and get involved with him, you will arouse the suspicions of those traitors. They will wait for an opportunity to make their move against you." Yu Shu's smile disappeared. She said in a mocking voice, "Who knows what His Majesty is thinking? The great Tiandao made me an official under Jing Chen. Perhaps he wants to use me, the genuine one, to lure the snake out of its hole." Shui Rui pondered for a moment and said, "If it's really like this, then you have to be even more careful. Even though His Majesty has sent people to look after you in the surroundings, those people's methods are secretive and full of tricks. Even an expert with formidable martial arts like Jing Chen has fallen into their schemes. You're a young girl, so if you really encounter any danger, you won't even be able to escape." Yu Shu saw that his expression was not good. It was obvious that he thought of the dangerous situation where her identity was exposed. Although she was worried, she still pretended to be relaxed and patted his shoulder, saying, "Big brother, you have forgotten what I do for a living. When there is danger, I know it earlier than anyone. The thing I am least afraid of is a trap." Hearing this, Shui Rui's expression became better. He thought for a while and said, "Don't you want to move to the north of the city? Tomorrow take me to see how your house is being built. I will go to the master's courtyard and pick some clean guards for you to guard the house. It is best to find a woman with high martial arts skills to follow you. Only then I can be at ease." Yu Shu also thought that this matter was necessary to be put on the agenda, but tomorrow was not possible. Tomorrow is Left Judge Xanye's birthday. He invited me to the Left Judge's mansion as a guest. Let's go the day after tomorrow. Didn't Big Brother receive the invitation? Shui Rui shook his head and said, "I received the invitation from the Xan mansion. However, grandfather has just had a disagreement with him. It is not convenient for me to go. I will not accompany you." Okay. Fortunately, the two of them were not the kind of man and woman who needed to see each other all the time. Otherwise, they would not be able to hide their secret. On the day of Xanye's birthday, Yu Shu went to the Xan mansion at the right time. That day, because of her joke, Xan Lu was really waiting for her at the gate. When he saw her, he pulled her in and helped her carry the gift. When she passed through the gate, she did not even need to take out the invitation card. because Jing Chen went to Yu Shu's house to send the letter. Therefore, the news of Yu Shu becoming a female official had not reached the ears of outsiders until today. At a glance, Xan Lu knew nothing about it. Otherwise, he would have pulled her and chattered non-stop. However, at this moment he did not let Yu Shu have a quiet ear. He brought her into the banquet, found a place to sit down, and began to gossip. Do you see the fat man with the silver belt over there? He is Feng Zhaomiao's eldest brother, the eldest son of the general's mansion. Don't be fooled by his happy appearance. I heard that he led troops to the northwest to fight a war and killed more than 10 people in a day. He even dried human blood and used it as ink to write. Yu Shu came today just to go through the motions. She did not want to use this occasion to make friends with anyone, so he sat next to her and listened to her made-up rumors. Because of this, the guests who heard that the female fortune teller would come to congratulate old Master Xan tonight did not notice the two girls hiding in the corner until the banquet started. Xanya knew that Xan Lu was not reliable, so she had sent someone to keep an eye on her. Before the banquet started, he saw the figure of Yu Shu. However, he stroked his beard and smiled. He did not go up to greet her. This old man was cunning. He knew that there were many people coming today. If he really brought Yu Shu out, it would not be a good thing. At this time, the birthday banquet was just eating, drinking, watching the drama, chatting with the guests, and receiving gifts. There was nothing new. The banquet lasted until dark. When Yu Shu saw that some guests were leaving, she wanted to leave. She told Xan Lu that the other didn't want her to stay and got up to send her out. You go first. There are many people today and grandfather can't greet all of them. You don't need to say goodbye to him in person. I will talk to him later. Xan Lu sent Yu Shu to the corridor outside, but was quickly stopped by a steward. Sixth Miss, the old master asked Miss Yu not to leave in a hurry. Wait for a while in the tea room in the garden. The old master will be there in a while. Yu Shu knew that she would not come in vain today, so she agreed with a smile. She asked Xan Lu to lead the way and waited in the garden. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Xanya sent away the guests around her and rushed over alone. Fei Fei, go and find your fourth brother. I haven't seen him all night. Is he playing with those unorthodox things again? Xanya had a stern expression on her face. When Xan Lu heard this, he immediately ran out. He was afraid that Xanya would catch Xan Yingguang and punish him according to the family rules. She had to inform him in advance. When Yu Shu saw Xanya send Xan Lu away, she stood up and bowed. Congratulations to official Xan for your long life. There are many people tonight, so this junior couldn't squeeze in to congratulate you. Please don't blame me. Xanya waved her hand and looked at her with a smile. A moment later she also bowed. I am the one who should congratulate official Yu for taking up the post. Yu Shu was not surprised that Xanya knew about it. Although the official appointment didn't need to go through his subordinates, she had gone to the Celestial Commissioner's office yesterday. It would be strange if the officials didn't hear the news. Congratulations to you too. I will send someone to congratulate you another day. Let's talk business first. Xanya sat down next to her. As she spoke, she reached into her bosom and took out a large bag. She handed it to her. The Lotus Room should know why I am looking for you. Yu Shu opened the bag and looked inside. She counted carefully. There were exactly 10 Tihu incense pills wrapped in gold. Without a second thought, he tucked the bag into his sleeves. Raising his head, he smiled and said, Lord Xen, you don't have to specially send someone to my house to congratulate me. I'll take this bag as a congratulatory gift. Hee. Xenia saw that she was smiling shamelessly and the veins on his forehead twitched. Yu Shu pretended not to see his expression. She tucked up her sleeves, turned around and sat up straight. She said to him seriously, Come, let's talk business. Xenia swallowed his anger and cursed under his breath. This shameless thief. Chapter 572. In a corner of the garden, Yu Shu received a note from Xenia. There was only a set of 8 characters written on it. Other than the fact that the person was a man, there was nothing else. She raised her eyebrows and asked, Have you forgotten, Lord Xen? I only promised you that I would divine the death of someone who is already dead. If you want to divine the death of a living person, it has to be someone from your Xian family. If you don't write down your surname and name, I won't divine it for you. Xenia coughed and said, Although this person was not a member of the Xian family, he died many years ago. I did not tell you his name because I do not know his real name. Do you think you can help me calculate when he died and how he died? Yu Shu lowered her head and scanned the paper again. If the person was still alive, he should be around 40 years old. She said to Xenia, "You don't know the date and cause of death and you want me to tell it for you. Moreover, it's a person who died many years ago. It's really troublesome. If I can't tell the result in 1 or 2 days, can I know when he died?" Her law of time of calamity was not the same as the real death prediction art. To tell the date of death of a dead person, she could only calculate it day by day based on the disasters he encountered before his death. Therefore, without knowing the specific date of death, it would be very troublesome to calculate. Xenia pondered for a moment and said, "In the 13th year of Baotai, I saw this person. 4 months later, I heard the news of his death. You can start investigating from then. Don't be afraid of the trouble, I can wait." Yushu hesitated for a moment and nodded. She was not afraid that Xenia would lie to her. She could tell whether it was true or not. Xenia was worried and warned her, "Don't tell anyone about us." Yushu flicked the paper in her hand and smiled, "Don't worry, Lady Xenia. It's just the payment you should give me." Xenia blew her beard. She knew that it was impossible for her to take out the 10 Tihu incense sticks. She said angrily, "Tomorrow I will send someone to deliver it to you." Only then was Yushu satisfied. She put away the note. Now that they were done discussing business, Xenia did not want to spend another moment with her. He stood up and said, "I still have to entertain the guests, so I won't be sending you out. Wait here for a moment, I'll send someone to call Fei back." Yushu also stood up and waved her hand. "There's no need to trouble yourself. Just find someone to take me to the gate." Xenia got the maid who was guarding the door to send her off and hurried towards the direction of the birthday banquet. In another corner of the Xen mansion, Xen Lu stomped his feet, turned his head and said to the person behind him, "I told you not to follow me. I have other things to do. I won't lead the way for you." The man walked up the winding corridor. Under the illumination of the colored lanterns, a dark, thin face was revealed, as well as a set of neat white teeth. If Yushu was here, she would recognize that this person was actually the troublesome young man guarding the door that they had encountered outside the treasure house on Shenyuan Street. "Miss, don't mind me. I will follow you to a place with people and then return to the banquet hall. There's no need for you to lead the way." Xen Lu looked at the person in front of her and said angrily, "Then take another path." Gucci looked worried. "If I walk alone, I won't be able to find the way. Your mansion is huge. If I accidentally enter a place that I shouldn't go, it's better to follow you." Xen Lu was so depressed that she was speechless. She listened to Xen Ye's words and left Yushu behind to look for Xen Yengguang. But on the way there she met this lost kid. She recognized who he was, and when she heard that he was lost, she even gloated a little. Who knew that this person was like a piece of dog skin plaster, sticking to her and she couldn't get rid of him. What a hateful person. "If you want to follow, then follow, but don't talk to me." Gucci smiled and closed his mouth, gesturing for her to go first. Xen Lu glared at him again before turning to lead the way. But the direction she was going was not to the west courtyard, but to the place where the banquet was held. She was a girl with a hard mouth but a soft heart. When Yushu returned that night, she took out the 8 characters of the dead man that Xenia gave her to study. Baotai was the reign name of the late emperor. If this person died in the 13th year of Baotai, then it had been 20 years. A person who died 20 years ago was worth Xenia going through so much trouble to make a deal with him just to confirm the cause of his death. There must be something more to it. It was a pity that he refused to tell her the name of this person. Otherwise she could investigate further. In the dead of the night, Yushu picked up her pen and calculated from the first day of the first month of the 13th year of Baotai. Based on the law of the time of calamity, she divined this man-made calamity. Whenever there was a small disaster, she recorded it. Just like that, she divined all the way until the 2nd month. For the time being, she called this dead man Mr. Shinyo, because he was born in the year of Shinyo. In the 2nd month of the 13th year of Baotai, Mr. Shinyo was unlucky and met with a fire disaster. Then half a month ago he committed a vile act. According to Yushu's preliminary judgment, he probably died in this fire disaster. However, to her surprise, this fire disaster was not caused by a vile act. There was no murderer but his own doing. Is this suicide? Yushu couldn't be sure. Maybe Mr. Shinyo didn't die here, so she continued to calculate. Then she divined that in the 3rd month she met with another bloody disaster. This time someone committed the crime. So, if Mr. Shinyo didn't die in the fire disaster in February, then would it be this bloody disaster? In order to verify it, Yushu continued to calculate. Who would have thought that after 4 months she found a disaster at the beginning of May? This is? Yushu saw a strange number and couldn't remember what kind of disaster it represented. So, she took out the Book of Life and Death, from the locked drawer at the head of the bed, which recorded all kinds of disasters. She had sorted out the records of the Supreme Court of Justice for 20 years. After checking, she found out, bereavement? In other words, in April Mr. Shinyo lost a relative, and the bereavement she recorded included his wife, parents, children, and siblings. She didn't know which relative died, but she was sure that Mr. Shinyo was still alive and well in May. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to calculate the bereavement disaster in the past 4 months. Looking at this result, Yushu touched her chin and thought that there were 2 possibilities. Either Xanya's memory was bad, or he deliberately used a living person's horoscope to deceive her. Putting down the pen, Yushu looked up at the sky outside the window that was gradually brightening. After a busy night, she stood up with a sore back and walked to the bed. She thought to herself, I promised Xanya that I would only help him read the horoscope of a dead person. If he gives me a living person's horoscope, it has nothing to do with me if I can't read the horoscope. I won't settle the score with him first. When I get the Tihu incense, I'll leave him hanging for a while. I'll deal with him when he can't take it anymore. Yushu covered herself with the blanket and fell asleep. On the table, a few pieces of paper were scattered, revealing a corner. There was a line of words in the middle. Baotai 13th year, April 21st, bereavement. The next day it was the 7th month. This was the Een moon, commonly known as the ghost moon. According to legend, every year at the end of the 6th month, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, who was in charge of hell, would open the gates of hell and release a group of hungry ghosts. Until the end of the 7th month, the gates of hell would be closed again. In ancient times, most of the common people believed in this legend. Therefore, at this time every year there would be sacrifices and many taboos. Therefore, this month the business of the big and small bazaars was booming. The fortune tellers were also busy every 2 to 3 days. Similarly, the incense offerings in the Taoist temples were much more vigorous than usual. On the first day of the 7th month, led by old Madame He and Zhao Hui, the whole family, except for He Xiaochuan who was still breastfeeding, got on the carriage and went to the Ascending Cloud Temple in the southern suburbs of the city to burn incense and pray for blessings. Although Yushu heard from Zhu Qingjue that the master of the Ascending Cloud Temple was a black-hearted person, she didn't stop her family from going to the Taoist temple. After all, they didn't worship humans but gods. It was better to believe in the existence of gods and ghosts than to not believe in the non-existence. Today there was a sea of people in the Ascending Cloud Temple. Old Madame He was supported by Zhao Hui and the maidservant. With great difficulty she followed the crowd and entered the door. Under the feet of the emperor, there was no lack of rich and powerful officials. In front of people, you might step on the wife of a certain assistant minister or the young mistress of a certain general's mansion. Therefore, everyone obediently lined up to enter the hall of 3 priests and kowtowed. There was no one who didn't know what was good for them. Of course, if you wanted to get some privileges it was okay, but if you weren't a prince, the 3 ministers or the 9 ministers, you'd better stand to the side. Old Madame He and Zhao Hui lined up in front with incense sticks. Yifangji and Yu Xiaoxiu were talking in a low voice. Yushu fell behind and looked around in boredom. There were people all around, so there was nothing to see. However, every face looked different. Fang Zijing had taught some basic physiognomy in the last class. Yushu had memorized a few pages of the textbook. At this moment, she looked at the faces and pondered. That man had a pair of thin eyebrows, which was the sign of timidity. That woman had a wide forehead and big eyes, which was the sign of prosperity for her husband. That child's eyebrows were sunken and shallow, which was the sign of sickness. While she was looking at them with interest, suddenly, a withered old face flashed in front of her eyes. Yushu was stunned. She blinked her eyes quickly and looked at the crowd again. That old face had disappeared, leaving a slightly stooped back. In the blink of an eye, it was buried behind the shoulders of a few Taoists. When she came back to her senses, her heart was beating wildly. She didn't have time to tell her family and squeezed into the crowd. After a while, Yushu stood in front of a crescent door in the northeast corner of the Taoist temple. She stared at the padlocked wooden door in front of her, panting and sweating. Why did it disappear? She had clearly chased after someone and came here. Yushu hesitated for a moment. She reached out to the door lock. Just as she pulled it, she heard a scolding voice behind her. What are you doing here? This is a place for cultivation. How can you barge in? Hurry up and leave. Yushu turned around and saw a young Taoist walking over in a hurry. She stepped forward and drove him away. Yushu pointed to the door and asked, "May I ask what this place is? Is there anyone living in it?" The Taoist looked impatient. He shook off her hand that was pulling the lock and stood in front of her in the door. His tone became more fierce. This is the place where our Abbey Dean meditates. What are you asking for? Hurry up and leave. If you are a guest, go to the front hall. If you don't leave now, I won't be polite to you. Yushu pursed her lips tightly and took a deep look at the courtyard door. Her heart was full of surprise. Chapter 573. Yushu returned home with a heavy heart. She didn't even eat dinner and locked herself in her room. She couldn't be wrong. The person she saw in Ascending Cloud Temple was definitely Qing Zheng. That withered old face was too easy to recognize, unless there was another person who looked exactly like him in this world. She thought she would never see her master again in this life, but he suddenly appeared in front of her. Yushu felt indescribably strange. If the person she met in the Taoist temple was Qing Zheng, why didn't he show up to meet her, but instead hid in Ascending Cloud Temple? Qing Zheng once told her that he swore never to step into the capital again. Was it because of this oath that he could only wander around outside the city? Yushu's heart was full of doubts and excitement. It was Qing Zheng who had encouraged her to leave Yang and come to the capital. He had also given her the task of finding the book of mystic fairy Lu Ren, so the old man Qing Zheng must know the secret of the great and disaster in this book. She inexplicably became the key person who broke people's lives and fell into layers of puzzles, unable to extricate herself. If she could see Qing Zheng and ask him face to face, wouldn't that be a way out? Qing Zheng wanted her to destroy the book of fairy maiden Lu Ren, which showed that he didn't like what was recorded in it. So, the goal of the master and disciple was the same. With such a strong ally, how could Yushu not be excited? Her top priority was to find Qing Zheng as soon as possible and get in touch with him. Yushu immediately decided to go to Ascending Cloud Temple tomorrow to find Qing Zheng's whereabouts. As the saying goes, 9 out of 10 things don't go your way in life. Against the crowd of July incense, Yushu ran to Ascending Cloud Temple for 3 days, but she didn't see Qing Zheng again. She asked the Taoists in the temple, but no one had seen an old man with similar appearance. It was as if the first time she saw him in the crowd was just her illusion. This allowed Yushu to confirm one thing. That day, Qing Zheng was indeed intentionally avoiding her. Yushu settled for the next best thing. She inquired about the abbot of the Ascending Cloud Monastery. She learned that Taoist Qing Yun had gone out to travel half a month ago and hadn't returned yet. Then when will Taoist priest return? The Abbey Dean does as he pleases. I don't know where he's going and I don't know when he'll return. If female benefactor has any difficulties, there's no harm in following me to see Martial Uncle Qing Ming. Perhaps he can dispel your doubts. No need. I'll wait for Taoist priest Qing Yun to come back. Thank you, young master. Yushu once again left the Ascending Cloud Temple empty-handed. In the afternoon, when she saw Shui Rui at Wangji Tower, Yushu told him about this strange incident. Shui Rui was a little surprised. Are you sure? Is he really your master? Although Shui Rui had never seen Qing Zheng before, he had taught such an excellent female apprentice as Yushu. But in his heart, that Taoist priest was already half an immortal. Yushu gestured with 2 fingers over her eyes and said, I have good eyesight. I can recognize anyone but him. You haven't seen my master. He looks very unique. In short, he's the kind of person that people can never forget. She was embarrassed to describe Qing Zheng's appearance directly, for she felt that it would hinder his prestige. To put it bluntly, that face was like an old tree spirit. Shui Rui wondered, is it possible that he didn't see you? Yushu sneered. If he didn't see me, why did he run away? I think he deliberately avoided seeing me. Shui Rui looked at her for a while and suddenly asked, have you ever thought that your master might have known that you were the one who broke his life? Yushu frowned slightly. Shui Rui continued, that's why he asked you to go to the capital to destroy such a little-known thing as the Book of Mystic Fairy. It's because he knew that if you went to the capital, the identity of the person who broke his life would be exposed sooner or later. In this way you would have a chance to get in touch with this book. Yushu had a strange look on her face. She recalled, when I was still in Yang City when Jingqin said goodbye to me, he told me the secret of his life evil Jidu Xing. At that time my master had not parted with me. I asked him about the way to break it and he warned me not to contact Jingqin. Shui Rui narrowed his eyes and said firmly, that's right. He not only knew that you were the person who broke his life, but also knew that the way to break his life was to make the great calamity and the person who broke his life forever and have children. That's why he asked you to stay away from Jingqin. He was afraid that you would fall in love with him after a long time. When your identity was revealed later, you would not refuse him and follow the instructions in the book. Why would you help him destroy the Book of Mystic Fairy? Yushu had to admit that what Shui Rui said made sense. If that was the case, it would explain why Qing Zheng did not choose Ji Xingxuan, who had a good aptitude, but chose a stupid wild girl as his disciple. Why did he repeatedly warn her not to contact Jing Chen when he heard about it? Yushu lowered her head. Her eyes were filled with self-mockery. So the old man Qing Zheng was using her from the beginning? No. No wonder he didn't look for me when he came to the capital. He clearly saw me, but he hid from me. If he didn't hide from her, did he have to confront her face to face? Yushu was very unhappy. She had always been grateful to Qing Zheng. It could be said that even if she was not a person who broke his life, since she had received his kindness, she would definitely do what she said and help him destroy the book. But he was purely using her, which made her feel very uncomfortable. Don't be sad. A big hand fell on her head and gently rubbed it. I'm just guessing. Maybe your master didn't know that you were the person who broke his life. It was a coincidence that he accepted you as his disciple. As for the Book of Mystic Fairy, that he asked you to go to the capital to find, you can just treat it as the wish of an elder. If he didn't give it to his trusted disciple, who would do it? He also knew that it was dangerous, so he taught you the skills to protect yourself. Didn't he follow you to the capital because he was worried? Hearing Shui Rui's comforting words, Yushu felt a little better. She looked up at him and said, "No matter what, I don't blame him. I learned his skills and he wanted me to help him do things. If we exchange like this, no one will feel sorry for the other." She said this as it should be. How could Shui Rui not hear that she did hurt her feelings? Seeing that she pretended to be fine, he only felt pity in his heart, but he did not regret revealing the mystery behind it. If Yushu's master really used her to destroy the book and did not care about her life and death, it was better to let her find out early so that she would not be unprepared. If he wants to hide from me now, it's useless for me to look for him. Yushu calmed down and thought about it. Fortunately, I'm going to be an official in the Celestial Commissioner soon. At that time, I'll secretly find out what happened to Yunhua in the past and wait for the opportunity to find the whereabouts of the Book of Mystic Fairy. I must see it with my own eyes. What is recorded in the book about the great calamity and the person who broke his life that made Yunhua Ez want to destroy it at the cost of his life? Only by knowing what the book was, could she think of a way to escape the fate of the person who broke his life. That's good too, Shui Rui responded. His hand smoothed through her hair and held her hand. His eyebrows shifted and he smiled lightly. The Double Seventh Festival is approaching. Prince Jing has invited us to accompany him on a night tour. You haven't seen the scenery at night, right? At that time I'll take you to see the custom of Anling. Yushu nodded. As expected, her attention was diverted by him. Her heart became curious. Right, have you investigated that Kongzhuang Yuan? Shui Rui said hesitantly, I investigated the matters that happened to him 3 years ago because I wanted to find out where he interacted with the 10th princess, and I noticed that there was a period of time when he worked in the palace, copying the emperor's imperial edict. At that time, had the 10th princess already moved the imperial ancestral temple back to the palace? And Yushu thought that Kong Qi most likely hooked up with the 10th princess at this time. She asked, then have you tried to find him personally? Shui Rui shook his head. He recently received an errand and has been staying at Wenhua Hall. It's not convenient for me to meet him. Yushu's eyes turned. It's your birthday in a few days. You wrote an invitation to him, he can't not come. Shui Rui smiled at her. You are thinking the same thing as me. After dinner, Shui Rui sent Yushu to Taishishu Library. Astrology scholar Sima Kue wanted to give Yushu special attention. From the first day to the 15th, she would watch the observatory and have her take notes. Yushu went there for a few nights and benefited a lot. Shui Rui was worried that she would stay at Taishishu Library at night. After all, in less than a year, 2 female students had mysteriously died. Therefore he would wait for her outside Taishishu Library every night and then send her home. Yushu didn't think it was necessary. She could use the 6 lines to predict her safety every day. However, seeing that he insisted on his own opinion, she just let him be. How could she not feel good about his care and love? In the blink of an eye, it was the 7th day of July. Yushu didn't go out with Shui Rui. Instead, she went to Xia Jiang's guest house to pick up Xia Jiang Min. This was something that Lu Tan asked her to do. Xia Jiang Helong had seen Lu Tan, the future son-in-law of the prince, a few days ago and agreed to let his daughter go out today. When he saw Yu Shu coming to pick up Xia Jiangmin, he politely asked her to wait in the living room and asked the servants to go to the embroidery house in the backyard to call Xia Jiangmin out. Xia Jianghelong sat with Yu Shu and talked with her kindly. After a few words, he mentioned the matter of Yu Shu becoming an official. I live in the capital city for a long time and am ignorant. Yesterday, I heard that Yu Swansea was appointed as the Celestial Commissioner. I didn't have time to congratulate you. I will send someone to give you a gift tomorrow. Mr. Xia Jiang, you are too polite. Yu Shu smiled, but she thought in her heart she was not as high profile as Zhang Shuiyuan. She wanted the whole world to know that she was a 7th-level official. When Jing Qin came to her house to read the appointment certificate, she didn't even say much to Xan Lu. It seemed that the Celestial Commissioner had no intention of announcing her appointment. Therefore, after 7 or 8 days, Taishishu Library was still calm on the surface. She went to school as usual and was happy that no one was watching her. Only the 2 academicians who taught her, Fang Zijing and Sima Kuei, asked her about it. Xia Jianghelong could hear about it. It showed that he was not as ignorant as he claimed to be. Not long after, Xia Jiangmin leisurely came out, dressed in her hair and wearing a hairpin. A girl of such a young age would always change her appearance every day. Yu Shu hadn't seen her for half a month, and her fair and tender little face had unexpectedly become a layer more lively. Her fair skin was tinged with a rosy glow, and she looked as if she could squeeze water out of it. Yu Shu really didn't know what Xia Jiangmin used to pamper her. Ashu. When Xia Jiangmin saw Yu Shu, she was very happy. Regardless of the fact that her father was still sitting there, she stepped forward and held her. It was obvious that they were intimate. Chapter 574. The second watch has arrived, begging for Little Pink. Yu Shu and Xia Jiangmin sat on the carriage and headed to the shore of the Lion Lake to meet up with Shui Rui and Lu Tan. On the way, Yu Shu pinched Xia Jiangmin's small hand and teased, "You are about to see your future husband. Tell me, what kind of person do you think he is?" Xia Jiangmin was so nervous that her lips were dry. How could she have the mood to think so much? She glared at her and said, "I hope that Prince Jing is not as fond of fooling people as you are." Yu Shu smiled, "You are also narrow-minded. Even now, you still hate me for pretending to be a man to trick you. But you can be at ease. I guarantee that Prince Jing is not a woman in disguise." Xia Jiangmin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She pinched her and this time she relaxed. Yu Shu was chatting and laughing with Xia Jiangmin. But she was faintly worried about her in her heart. Lu Tan didn't seem like a man who could understand amorous feelings. Moreover, he was quite ambitious. So, she didn't know whether a woman like Xia Jiangmin would suit his taste or not. At dusk, there was still heat on the Lion Lake. The light from the lake swept past and there were many tourists. Most of them were young ladies and there were also groups of scholars. Shui Rui and Lu Tan had arrived a step earlier. They stood under a willow tree by the Lion Lake and waited. Because the 2 of them were handsome and had an extraordinary temperament, they attracted the attention of passers-by. But because of the tall guards on both sides of them, no one dared to come close. The 2 of them were chatting in private, but it had nothing to do with their relationship. Yesterday, 7th Imperial Brother was invited to the judicial office for interrogation in the middle of the night and only returned to the Wang Fu in the morning. Has Biao Xiong heard of any developments in the case? I have not been on duty these past 2 days and did not ask about the matter. If Wang Yu wants to know anything, I will go and inquire tomorrow. Lu Tan's face revealed a trace of disappointment. He shook his head and said, "There is no need to deliberately ask about it. When the case comes to light, it will naturally be made known to the public." Shui Rui looked at him and turned his head to look into the distance. He saw a familiar carriage coming from afar and smiled. He pointed to it for Lu Tan to see. "It's here." Lu Tan then shifted his attention. Following his finger, he looked into the distance. The youth's determined heart at this moment had a trace of strangeness. That extravagant 2-wheeled carriage quickly arrived. When the driver stopped, the maid sitting at the side opened the door. She lifted the curtain and stood at the door to help the people. Yu Shu was the first one to jump out of the car. Lu Tan only swept a glance at her. Then, he was attracted by the graceful silhouette of a person who stooped down and stretched out her body. Then a little light burst out from his eyes. She was at the age of green jade, with the posture of a lush mulberry, and a delicate face like a lotus. When she raised her eyes, there was a tinge of tenderness and timidity. Her shimmering beauty made Lien Su, who was watching from the shore, feel ashamed. "My name is Xia Jiangshi. Greetings, 9th young lord." Xia Jiangmin bowed gracefully and her voice was like jade beads falling on a plate. Lu Tan's eyes flashed, and then he took half a step forward unhurriedly and raised his hand to support her. Miss, you may rise. Xia Jiangmin straightened her body and slowly raised her eyes to look at the young man in front of her who was about the same age as her. He had a handsome face, and when she saw him staring at her, she couldn't help but purse her lips into a smile and lower her head. Seeing this scene, Yu Shu's heart calmed down. She turned her head and gave Shui Rui a look. Shui Rui smiled at her. He could also see that Lu Tan was very satisfied with the appearance of this future princess. The wind on the lake was cool and refreshing and the sun was setting. The four of them walked together in pairs, but at this moment, they didn't know how fate would play tricks on them in the near future. At that time, Qixi was the day when the cowherd and the weaving maid met, and it was also the day when women begged for cleverness. Whoever had a girl of marriageable age would make colorful needles and thread in advance to worship the moon goddess on this day. The four of them didn't stay at the Lion Lake for long. After meeting each other, they sat in 2 horse carriages and went sightseeing on the Chunlan River not far from here according to Lu Tan's plan. When they reached the riverside, night fell. There were people in 2s and 3s on the riverside. It wasn't crowded, but this long stretch of riverside didn't seem empty. There were already rich families by the riverside who set up lanterns and occupied a good spot. They enjoyed the cool breeze of the river, ate fruits, drank wine, admired the stars and talked about legendary love stories. There were also girls who would dress up beautifully on this day and show their faces outside, so that people would know that some family had a daughter who had just grown up, was virtuous and loved beauty. It had become the custom of Enling to honor the Chunlan River on the Qixi festival. There was a story behind this. At this time, the scholarly great scholar Shui came in handy. When Emperor Anwu first took over the capital, there was a year when the northern border was invaded by barbarians. He personally led the army, but there was no news of him. Empress Ningzhen stayed in the capital, worried and hopeful. She would often pray on this Chunlan River that leads to the north. There was a banyan tree by the riverside, and every time Empress Ningzhen went there, she would hang a handmade talisman under the tree. One day in July, the banyan tree actually bore fruit, and then news of Emperor Anwu's triumphant return came from the capital. Therefore, people say that the banyan tree has a spirit and respectfully calls it the goddess tree. Every year on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month, there would be men and women with worries on their minds who would go to this 300-year-old banyan tree and tie a sachet containing their worries to the tree deity to bless them. After 3 days, it is said that their wishes would be fulfilled. Xia Jiangmin and Yu Shu were not locals, and this was the first time they heard of this story. The former's eyes shone with excitement, while the latter looked around and pointed to a place far away where the shadows of people were moving, and the place was unusually bright. Are you talking about that tree? It was rare to see a banyan tree growing in the north, let alone on the riverside. Such a lush forest from afar could not be mistaken. Lu Tan said, "That's the tree." Looking at the towering crown of the tree, Xia Jiangmin had an idea, and asked delicately, "Ninth young master, have you also made a wish on the tree of goddess?" Lu Tan turned to look at her and smiled, "Not really. This is the first time I came to this river on the Qixi festival." After a pause he asked, "Why don't we go take a look later?" Xia Jiangmin's eyes sparkled as she nodded. Her slightly curious look was somewhat childish, but it did not lose its beauty. Shui Rui said, "There's no hurry. Ninth brother has prepared a banquet, let's eat first before heading there." "That's settled then. Let's eat first and fill our stomachs so that we can go for a night trip." Yu Shu clapped her hands and laughed. The four of them then climbed up to a restaurant on the riverside under the illumination of the lanterns. After the banquet, the four of them walked on the river with only 2 guards. They were dressed lightly and walked along the river. Not far from the green fog of the banyan tree, there was a small stall selling incense pouches, flowery ropes and colorful threads. The craftsmanship was considered good. Seeing that there were many people buying, Xia Jiangmin also pulled Yu Shu to choose a few colorful ropes. As for the pouches that were used as fortune pouches, she was not interested in them. There were scholars who specialized in lending ink and paper around the banyan tree, decorating it with lanterns and streamers. The starlight shone down, illuminating the old banyan tree that was lush and green during the day, making it glow as if the tree itself was glowing. This nyang tree was thick enough for 5 people to encircle it. The layers of branches were bent, and the lower branches were already densely packed with colorful pouches. The higher the branches, the fewer the fortune pouches. Standing at the foot of the banyan tree and looking up, It was as if there were countless fruits, a very spectacular sight. Lu Tan accompanied Xia Jiangmin to write the fortune pouches. Yushu quietly pulled on Shui Rui's sleeve. The two of them stopped at the back, giving them some time to be alone. Eldest brother, look, isn't it clearly a good match for Prince Jing? Yushu tilted her head to ask. Shui Rui raised his head to look at the boundless blue banyan tree, his tone unhurried. If they can be compatible, that would be the best. Saying that, he lowered his head to look at her, his eyes dark, just like you and me. Yushu silently raised her finger, using the cover of his wide sleeves to hook his palm. In the next moment she was forcefully held by him. Yushu was shocked. There were so many people here and she was afraid of being noticed. She turned her head to glare at him and wanted to pull her hand back, but he held it so tightly that she couldn't break free. When he saw her panic, Shui Rui laughed in a low voice, and he was just about to say something when he suddenly noticed a figure in the corner of his eyes, and he hurriedly turned around to look at the other side of the banyan tree. What is it? Yushu sensed that his mind was wandering and asked. Shui Rui released her and raised his hand to point in front. That's Kong Qi. Chapter 575. That's Kong Qi. Yushu looked at the other side of the old banyan tree. Among the people under the tree there was a thin young man. His appearance was average, but his face was fair. His every movement revealed a refined air. The young man held a long bamboo pole in his hand. At the end of the pole, there was a light yellow fortune pouch tied with a green string. He raised his chin and carefully hung the fortune pouch high on the branch. He looked very focused and did not notice Shui Rui and Gu Shijiu who were standing not far away from them. Is that him? Yushu's eyes did not leave that person. She tilted her head to confirm with Shui Rui that this person was the man they suspected of having an affair with the 10th princess. Yes. Shui Rui moved his feet and was about to step forward. Yushu noticed his intention and quickly pulled him back. She took a few steps back and stood behind the people. Big brother, don't be anxious. She squinted at Kong Qi's action and whispered to Shui Rui, when he leaves, let's take off his fortune pouch and take a look. Maybe we can find something. On Chinese Valentine's Day, a person came to the goddess tree to pray for blessings. There was no joy on his face. It was obvious that there was something wrong with him. Shui Rui hesitated for a moment and nodded. Kong Qi was completely unaware that his every move was seen by others. After hanging up the fortune pouch, he stood under the goddess tree for a while before he turned around and left expressionlessly. As soon as Yushu saw him leave, she quickly moved forward and went around to the other side of the tree. She grabbed the longest bamboo pole before a passerby could do so. There were many people praying under the tree. If she brazenly went to take someone else's fortune pouch, the tree guardian would definitely stop her. Shui Rui was still looking up at that smear of pale yellow between the trees. Yushu took off the red incense pouch from her waist and stuck it on the top of the bamboo pole. She tiptoed and pretended to poke the branches. When no one was paying attention, she hooked and pulled the light yellow fortune pouch. She hid it with the red incense pouch and held it in her hand. Then she stuffed it into her sleeve and gave the bamboo pole to the person next to her. The rope is broken. You go first. Yushu and Shui Rui went far away from the goddess tree. They came to a place with fewer people. She took out Kong Qi's fortune pouch and gave it to Shui Rui. It doesn't seem to contain paper, needles and thread. Shui Rui took it but did not open it. He stared at the yellow incense pouch in his hand. He did not open it. Yushu poked him. Brother? Shui Rui raised his head and looked at her. If it was you, you already have a man you like but you are engaged to another man. Will you frame another man for the man you like? Although he knew that it was his wishful thinking, he still resisted the truth that was about to be revealed. Could it be that the woman who made him lose everything back then was really not worth it at all? Yushu was stunned when she heard his question. She thought that he still thought that the 10th princess was innocent. She raised her eyebrows and sneered. I'm not the 10th princess. How would I know what she is thinking? You don't dare to look at it? Then let me do it. If the 10th princess was innocent, it proved that her divination was wrong. Should he believe her or a dead person? After that, she snatched the fortune pouch from his hand. She untied the rope and reached into the pouch. She found two things and looked at them in the light. One was an apricot yellow ribbon. It was made of soft silk. It was obviously a woman's item. The other was a ruby jade pendant with 2 petals. The cracks were uneven. It looked like it was broken. Yushu turned the 2 items over and over again. She found another clue. The apricot yellow ribbon was embroidered with a small Yao character with gold silk. She looked up at Shui Rui, who had a complicated expression on his face. She asked, "What is the 10th princess's name?" Lu Yao. Yu Shu sneered. She stuffed the ribbon and the 2 petals of jade into his hand. "Look at it yourself." Shui Rui's finger moved, and he saw a small character on the light yellow ribbon, causing his gaze to dim as he clenched his fingers tightly, and he went silent for a moment before he said, "This is a ribbon from the palace, and only the women of the palace can wear it, and it rarely leaves their bodies." Yu Shu coldly said, "That's right. The 10th princess did have an affair with a man. That man is Kong Qi. You have seen the witness and the material evidence. What else is there to doubt? Do you need to confront that Kong Zhuangyuan in person? That way you will be convinced." She thought that he had already given up. She didn't expect that he would not shed a tear until he saw the coffin. When Shui Rui heard this, he knew that she had misunderstood, and he held on to those things with one hand while holding onto her shoulder with the other, and he said in a low voice, "Don't think too much about it. I naturally believe you, and I just feel slightly uncomfortable in my heart when I see concrete evidence." 3 years ago he wanted to marry Lu Yao. He inquired about her preferences and secretly prepared to protect this woman. But when he was thinking about it, he didn't know that she already had someone else in her heart. Moreover, she had been in contact with him in private. Thinking about it, he was really stupid. Yu Shu frowned and pointed at the things in his hand. "What are you going to do? Was he going to pretend that he didn't know anything and investigate in secret? Or was he going to confront Kong Qi openly?" Shui Rui looked at her. "What do you think I should do?" Yu Shu sneered again. "If I were you, I would beat him up first." Regardless of whether Kong Qi and the 10th princess were really in love with each other or they were just using each other, the 2 of them had caused Shui Rui to be the scapegoat for the past 3 years. There was also Shui Jinshuan, who was still in a daze. If the woman died, they couldn't go to the underworld to settle the score with her. But if the man was alive, they must teach him a lesson. Shui Rui looked at her, turned around, and strode forward. Yu Shu was stunned and quickly chased after him. "What are you doing?" Shui Rui didn't stop walking. He turned his head and smiled at her. "I'll listen to you. I'll beat him up first." Seeing that he was serious, Yu Shu opened her mouth, but she didn't know whether to persuade him to calm down or to cheer him on. The 2 walked quickly along the river bank to the west, in the direction where Kong Qi left. Not long after, they saw the thin figure in front of them. There were few pedestrians around. Yu Shu was about to ask Shui Rui to pull the man to a place where there was no one and then beat him up. However, Shui Rui had already strode forward and grabbed the man's shoulder with one hand. Yu Shu opened her mouth and was stunned. No way he was going to beat him up now. Kong Qi was suddenly pulled by the shoulder. He turned his head abruptly and met Shui Rui's deep gaze. "Shui, brother Shui?" A few years ago, Kong Qi, who was still the top scholar, was upright and kind. He couldn't bear to see Lu Hao, who had not yet been conferred the title of king, trying to win over the top scholars, so he wrote a poem to satirize him. With Lu Hao's narrow-mindedness, he naturally wouldn't let him have an easy time. Therefore, the dignified top scholar was falsely accused of misconduct and couldn't become an official for a while. At that time, Shui Rui was young and admired Kong Qi's talent, so he acted as a peacemaker and asked Lu Hao to let him go. Because of this, the 2 became friends. Although they weren't good friends, they became confidants. Therefore, even though Shui Rui had listed Kong Qi as a suspect since a long time ago, he never thought that the man who raped the 10th princess would be him. Shui Rui smiled coldly, let go of his shoulder, and handed the thing in his hand to him. "Lord Kong, you dropped something." The apricot yellow palace ribbon was wrapped with 2 pieces of broken jade, naked in front of him. Chapter 576. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. When Yu Shu saw Shui Rui taking out the 2 items and Kong Qi's expression changed, she thought that he would deny it. However, he was only shocked for a moment before calming down. He glanced at Yu Shu, who was standing behind Shui Rui. Realization dawned on him, but he did not panic. He took the ribbon and the jade from Shui Rui's hands. "It's mine." Shui Rui narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "It's good that you admit it. Let me ask you, where did you get this woman's accessory?" Kong Qi lowered his eyebrows and said to Shui Rui, "It's not convenient here. Come with me." After that, she led Shui Rui to the embankment. Yu Shu went back on her heels but kept a small distance between them. Far away from the crowd, the surroundings were empty. Kong Qi stopped and looked at the ripples on the river. She said to the people behind her, "Ever since I heard that the fortune teller can determine life and death, I have been waiting for the day you find me." Shui Rui's face darkened. No wonder he was not panicked when he was exposed. It turned out that he had a premonition that he would investigate the real cause of the 10th princess's death. "If I don't find you, are you going to pretend that nothing happened?" Kang Chi turned around and looked at him. Instead of answering, she asked, "What do you know?" "I know that after I asked His Majesty to appoint a marriage, there was a man who secretly seduced the 10th princess and had a private relationship with her. He forced her to choose the day of my aunt's birthday to jump off a building and frame my sister to escape from the marriage. I did not expect that the villain was you, Kang Chi." Shui Rui thought it was ridiculous. He did not owe Kang Chi a favor, but he did lend a helping hand when Kang Chi was down and out. In the end, he knew a person's face but not his heart. Hearing Shui Rui's mockery, Kang Chi smiled bitterly and shook her head. The fortune teller truly lives up to her name. He thought that Yushu's art of death alone could deduce all these, but he did not know that Shui Rui's judgment was also involved. "So you admit it?" Shui Rui stared at Kang Chi, feeling that his reaction was too calm, so calm that it was strange. "It's the truth," said Kang Chi lightly. "There's no need to deny it. It was my intention to seduce the 10th princess, and then I came up with a plan to make her injure herself, so that she could be married to your Shui family, so that I could get rid of the marriage arranged by His Majesty. Who would have thought that a beauty like her would have an unfortunate fate, and so she died just like that?" Shui Rui frowned. He said coldly, "I'm afraid it's not that her beauty is unlucky, but that someone wants to kill her from the beginning. The death of the 10th princess was not an accident, nor was it because she was unlucky, but because she had been schemed against." Hearing this, Kang Chi tightened her grip on the soft ribbon in her hand and remained silent. "I know, Kang Chi. If you're not someone who's greedy for power, then who ordered you to do this?" Kang Chi bowed his head. "Are you unwilling to say it, or are you afraid to say it?" Shui Rui suddenly became aggressive. "Are you threatened, or are you willing to give up? The 10th princess was willing to risk her life for you, and she didn't identify you even when she was dying. She was deeply in love with you, but you want to protect the murderer who framed her. I didn't realize that you were so heartless. You're such a coward." Kang Chi finally responded. He looked down at the bright color in his hand, and his voice was a little gloomy. "If I tell you who the mastermind is, can you promise me one thing? Say it. Let this matter be a secret and don't expose it. You know, it's not easy for me to get to where I am today, and I don't want to ruin my future." Yushu stood not far away and listened. She sneered at the corner of her mouth. "That woman I've never met. Is it because of such a selfish man? Is that why she rejected Shui Rui?" Shui Rui looked at Kang Chi, who bowed his head and begged, and his eyes became complicated again. "Tell me the truth exactly as it is. I can promise you to keep it a secret." Hearing Shui Rui's promise, Kang Chi seemed to be relieved and looked up at him. "Thank you." Shui Rui waved his hand. "You can say it now. The person who ordered me was Prince Ning." Shui Rui and Yushu were both surprised, but they didn't feel surprised at all. This kind of insidious and shameless behavior was really like Prince Ning's style. "I remember that you used to despise Prince Ning. Why did you listen to his evil deeds?" Shui Rui was puzzled. Finally telling the secret she had been suppressing in her heart, Kang Chi felt relieved. She laughed coldly and said truthfully, "After I offended him in the past, you mediated. On the surface, Prince Ning let me go, but then he plotted something else. He took advantage of one of my rides and had someone die under my horse. He threatened me that if I didn't lower my head, I would be charged with murder. If I listened to him, he would protect me and let me enter Wenhua Hall. So I was under his control and had to work for him." Shui Rui thought, as expected, coercion and bribery have always been Lu Hao's methods. "When did you start to deliberately get close to 10th princess?" "That year, the 8th month, the mid-autumn banquet." Shui Rui frowned. "At that time, I hadn't asked the Holy One to appoint me to marry, but Prince Ning had already started planning. Lu Hao had foresight and foresight. In this aspect, Lu Hao was superior to others." Kang Chi said, "After the gentleman hibiscus banquet, you suddenly became the disciple of Grand Scholar Lu to learn the Book of Tea. You also reined in your usual behavior and stopped going to the brothels. It wasn't hard for Prince Ning to guess your thoughts at that time." Shui Rui pressed his lips together. He and Lu Hao hadn't fallen out at that time. Who would have thought that Lu Hao, on the one hand, was intimate with him, and on the other hand, plotted against him? "After you asked for the edict, I successfully entered Wenhua Hall. Relying on the spies in Prince Ning's palace, I secretly met with 10th Princess, Kong Chi said, his voice lowered. 10th Princess was naive and didn't know the evils of the human heart. She thought that I sincerely admired her and gradually fell into Prince Ning's trap. When the time was right, Prince Ning told me to instigate her and make her pretend to be pushed down Seaview Tower by your sister, thus implicating the Shui family. If 10th Princess died, you couldn't escape responsibility. Prime Minister Shui would lose the emperor's heart, Guifei would lose favor, and even more seriously, the entire family would be implicated. Shui Rui's handsome face instantly became gloomy. Towards Lu Hao, he used to listen to Shui Lingnan's instructions because they were on different sides. He was close but distant. But today, after hearing all this, he confirmed that Lu Hao was the culprit who caused him to be doomed. How could he not hate him? However, it seems that Ning Wang also miscalculated. Your Shui family's fate has not ended, and you managed to survive this calamity. After the death of the 10th princess, the Holy One did not hold you accountable. Kong Chi had a disdainful expression. He sneered because Lu Hao's scheming didn't get what he wanted. Shui Rui secretly sneered. How would Kong Chi know that the Shui family's safety that time was exchanged for royal consort Shui's loss of the dragon fetus in her womb? I have told you everything I know. Whether Brother Shui wants to seek revenge or swallow his anger, I only hope that you keep your promise and keep my secret. Shui Rui came back to his senses. He stared at Kong Chi's fair and delicate face for a moment and said, I have one last question, I hope you can tell me frankly. Kong Chi nodded. When did you first meet the 10th princess? Kong Chi was stunned. Yushu was confused. Didn't that person say that he began to seduce 10th princess at the Mid-Autumn Festival banquet 3 years ago? Kong Chi's stunned face turned to the distance. His eyes fell on the brightest lady tree, and his dim eyes were dyed with a layer of glimmer. 4 years ago, on the night of the double 7th festival. On the 7th day of the 7th month of that year, he and his classmate made an appointment to visit the river, but they got separated on the way. On the way, he picked up a beautiful silk ribbon and waited by the roadside to prevent the lost girl from looking for it anxiously. Who knew that this wait would lead to a period of infatuation? His absent-minded look. In Shui Rui's eyes, the last trace of unwillingness in his heart was peeled off in exchange for relief. Shui Rui no longer said anything. He turned to look at Yushu, who was waiting not far away, and walked quickly towards her. Let's go. Yushu didn't know what was going on, so she was pulled away by his arm. She turned back and pointed to Kong Chi. Don't worry, the ribbon and jade are still in his hands. We have to take them back as evidence. No need. Shui Rui turned to look at her, and his dark eyes lit up again. He said leisurely, that is a token of love given by 10th princess to her beloved. What do I need it for? Yushu heard this and thought that he was envious of her. She rolled her eyes and said, it's just a lousy ribbon. How can you treat it as a treasure? I will give you a real treasure later, which will be thousands of times better than his. Shui Rui smiled, even if you give me a hair, I will treat it as a treasure. Tsk glib tongue. It's the truth. Don't you like to hear it the most? The two gradually went away, leaving Kong Chi standing alone on the embankment. He looked down at the yellow and crimson ribbons on his fingers and murmured, you knew that I lied to you, but you still listened to me and sacrificed your life for me. Is it worth it? A gust of wind blew, and the ribbon in his hand fluttered, caressing his fingers as if someone was comforting him. A line of salty tea fell silently, and Kong Chi closed his eyes. It's me who's incompetent. Right now I can only protect your chastity after you die. If you're aware of this in the afterlife, please wait for me. After I've avenged you, I'll accompany you to cross the bridge of helplessness. Lu Tan had accompanied Xia Jiangmin to hang the fortune pouch on the goddess tree. When he turned around, he didn't see Yushu and Shui Rui. When he asked the guards, he didn't know where they had gone. What should we do? Xia Jiangmin eagerly looked at Lu Tan. Brother Jiu, should we stay here and wait for them, or should we look elsewhere? Just now, Lu Tan thought it was inconvenient for her to call him ninth young master, so he asked her to change the way she addressed him. Calling him ninth brother, invisibly narrowed the distance between them. Lu Tan said, don't worry. They won't get lost with my cousin here. It's rare to see so many people tonight. Let's walk around and maybe we will meet them. Xia Jiangmin nodded and did as he said. She had had dinner with Lu Tan, and when they were alone together just now, she found that he was not annoying. On the contrary, he was calm and generous, so she gradually relaxed and got along with him. Since she had decided to replace Xia Jiangying and be a princess, she would not back down. Xia Jiangmin quietly looked at Lu Tan's side face with distinct facial features. She gently bit her lips and felt a little perturbed in her heart. Would this person like her? Last night, after they had enjoyed themselves to their heart's content, Shui Rui, Lu Tan, and the others finally met up at one place. They boarded the same carriage and first sent the two young ladies back to their respective homes before they returned to their respective residences. That night, Yushu was relieved. First, she saw that Xia Jiangmin and Lu Tan got along well, and second, Shui Rui found out the culprit, Prince Ning, and the truth of the 10th princess's death was finally revealed. However, what she couldn't understand was that Shui Rui didn't seem to want to pursue Kong Qi's responsibility, but wanted to help them hide it according to the agreement. She could only guess that Shui Rui put all the blame on Prince Ning alone. There was still time for new hatred and old hatred. Yushu slept at home until the sun was shining. As soon as she got out of bed, she heard a report from outside that the Celestial Commissioner had come. Yushu went to the front hall to take a look. She saw that Kunling Bureau's brush supervisor Reni Jia came in with two attendants, his hands carrying sandalwood trays. On one tray was a set of vermilion official robes and black muslin neatly stacked. On the other tray were green boots, fish pouches and other items. When Renrenjia saw Yushu, he first saluted with his hands folded in front, and then explained the reason. The day before yesterday a foreign envoy came. Because he admires our Daini school, he asked His Majesty to see it. His Majesty agreed to hold a land and water conference in the palace. All the masters of E above the 7th level in the capital must come, on the day of the Hungry Ghost Festival. Milord is a 5th level and your name is in the prison, so you should accompany the Imperial Secretary. This is the summer dress prepared by the Secretariat in advance. Please try it on. I see. She didn't expect that she would have the opportunity to enter the palace so soon. Last time when she worshipped the ancestors in the Imperial Mausoleum, she didn't even see what the Emperor looked like. This time she must see it clearly. Yushu took the official robes. Renrenjia was very careful, and the two attendants he brought were both female servants. They accompanied Yushu to the backyard to try on the clothes and teach her how to wear them. Yundo stood at the side and couldn't help. She stared at her without blinking, not daring to make a mistake. The whole family knew that Yushu was going to be an official in the Celestial Commissioner, so they were very excited for the first few days. Zhao Hui was so happy that she couldn't sleep all night. She was afraid that she had a dream. Old Madam he got up early in the morning to burn incense, and even the servants who guarded the gate and ran errands in the courtyard raised their heads. If it weren't for Yushu's order to not let people talk too much, the gate would probably be blocked for a while, making her unable to return home. Yushu changed into the female official robes and looked at herself in the mirror. She was quite satisfied. She had seen the official robes of the Celestial Commissioner before. Most of the high-ranking officials had the style of the Wei and Jin dynasties. They wore loose clothes with big sleeves and long hats, making them look like immortals. She didn't like those messy clothes. Fortunately, the style of the female official robes was very simple. The robes were vermilion, a little dark in color. The tight waist and tight sleeves made her body look straight. From the collar to the cuffs, there was a black border that was 2 fingers wide. The beautiful iris pattern was only visible in the light. There were 2 moon-white patches on the shoulders, each of which was embroidered with a blooming iris flower. The deep blue petals were wide open, like the wings of a butterfly. They rested on the shoulders and emitted a fragrant fragrance. It was extremely beautiful. Speaking of which, it was quite interesting. Officials of the imperial court had patches that represented their official rank. They were embroidered in different positions and the types were also different. For example, military officials were embroidered with ferocious beasts on their backs. For civil officials, they were embroidered with birds on their chests. As for officials of the imperial court, they were embroidered with celestial phenomena on their shoulders. The female officials were different. They were embroidered with flowers and plants. Because female officials were rare and there were only a few of them in the imperial court, many people didn't know about them. For example, Yushu was a 5th grade official, and the patch on her back was the iris flower. Yushu didn't understand these things, so she asked the 2 female servants who worked in the Imperial Records Department, "What about a 1st grade female official? What kind of pattern is on her shoulder?" The 2 were stunned. After looking at each other, one of them said carefully, "Your Excellency, we have never seen a 1st grade female official before." Yushu smiled and her eyes flashed. She thought, why not? In the history of the Great Han Dynasty, wasn't there Empress Ningxuan? She was the first celestial commissioner. Chapter 577. The 9th day of the 7th month was Shui Rui's birthday. The young masters and mistresses of the Shui residence were not fond of extravagant banquets. Even Shui Rui, the eldest son of the first wife, was no exception. Last year when he returned to the capital, Shui Lingnan hosted a grand banquet. This year, as usual, he only prepared 3 to 5 tables in the residence and invited his colleagues and friends. In the morning, when Shui Rui woke up, the steward of the courtyard brought along a group of servants to kowtow outside his room to congratulate him. The manservants and servant girls who were presentable personally presented birthday gifts to Shui Rui. They could not be considered as rare gifts, but they were all from their hearts. Shui Rui smiled and accepted them, then asked Baoda to return to the back of his room. "Has grandfather returned from court?" Shui Rui asked the steward guarding the door. Shui Lingnan was of the first rank. Other than the winter and summer holidays, he had to enter the palace to attend to affairs. This was the so-called close minister of the emperor. "Young master has not returned yet. Go, send someone to keep an eye on him. When grandfather returns, pass it to me." Shui Rui stood in the corridor and looked at the rising sun. He thought to himself, there is something that needs to be clarified today. Shui Lingnan had just returned from the palace and changed out of his official robes when he heard that Shui Rui had come to pay his respects. "Is today Qingbai's birthday?" Shui Lingnan turned to ask Su Li. As the second steward of the Shui residence, Su Li was Shui Lingnan's right-hand man. When Shui Lingnan was middle-aged, he once led an army at the borders. Su Li was one of his generals. Later on, he violated military discipline and was spared by Shui Lingnan. Su Li could not continue his career and stayed in the Shui residence. Master did not remember wrongly. Su Li took the cup of tea from a maid and lowered his head to smell it before handing it to Shui Lingnan. "I have prepared a gift. It is a book on military strategy that you mentioned last month for young master to read. I had someone send it to the East Chamber early in the morning." Shui Lingnan nodded and looked at the white hair on his temples in the mirror. He sighed softly, "I am getting old. I am not as energetic as the day before. I cannot remember things." Su Li lowered his head and said, "Master is busy with state affairs. In order to share His Majesty's worries, I have racked my brains. How can I keep everything to myself?" Shui Lingnan did not comment. After rinsing his mouth, he sent someone to summon Shui Rui to his room. As soon as Shui Rui entered the house, he saw Shui Lingnan sitting on the couch and greeted him. Although the grandfather and grandson lived in the same mansion, they did not see each other every day. The Shui clan's second master had listened to Shui Lingnan's arrangements when he first took office in the Ministry of War and moved to the West Manor. In the eyes of outsiders, this action was obviously a display of Shui Lingnan's firm determination to pass down the Shui clan's business to Shui Rui in the future. "Have a seat." Shui Lingnan pointed to a chair not far from him. Not a few days ago, the grandfather and grandson had a dispute in the study over Shui Jinshuan's marriage. After the matter was over, they acted as if nothing had happened and continued to be Yan Zhangshuan's daughter. "Today you have grown a year older. In the future you must be more prudent. You must be well-mannered on the outside and cultivate your character on the inside. You must not bring disgrace to the Shui family." Shui Lingnan reprimanded him. Seeing that Shui Rui was listening attentively and did not show any impatience, Shui Lingnan's expression gradually eased and he said, "You came here in a hurry this morning. Is there anything else besides greeting me? People say that no one knows a son better than his father. This was because his son was taught by his father." Shui Lingnan also raised Shui Rui as his son. How could it escape Shui Lingnan's eyes? Shui Rui's eyes were looking at Shui Lingnan. He said, "It's about my marriage." Shui Lingnan glanced at him and guessed what he was going to say. So he said, "The Earl's daughter is talented and beautiful. What is there to be dissatisfied with?" "I am not dissatisfied with Miss Rui, but—" Shui Rui turned his head and looked at the open door. Shui Lingnan understood and waved his hand for Su Li to disperse the servants outside. He closed the door and waited outside. Only the grandfather and grandson were left in the room. Shui Rui then slowly said, "Some time ago, I dreamed of the 10th princess's soul." Shui Lingnan frowned and said in a low voice, "She has been dead for so long and you still can't forget her. Why, are you telling me that it was her soul who told you not to marry?" Shui Rui held the armrest and lowered his head. "The 10th princess only said that she died unjustly and asked me to help her find the murderer. Grandfather also clearly understands that it was impossible for younger sister to harm the princess back then. The murderer was someone else, and their target was the imperial consort and our Shui family. Does grandfather not want to know who plotted against us from behind?" Hearing this, Shui Lingnan was unmoved. He said coldly, "Things have changed with time. What is the point of looking into this? Even if you find the murderer, do you think His Majesty will help you?" Shui Rui carefully looked at Shui Lingnan's expression and suddenly showed a trace of self-mockery. "Grandfather, you already knew that the whole thing was instigated by Prince Ning." He had always wondered why Shui Lingnan was so indifferent when the Shui family suffered such a big loss. He even tacitly agreed that Shui Jinxuan was the murderer of the 10th princess. It turned out that he already knew the truth. That was why he kept silent. It was no wonder that when he had just returned to the capital last year, Shui Lingnan had insisted that he break off all ties with Lu Hao. He didn't hesitate to fall out with him. He said that it was because Lu Tan had returned to the capital, but in fact he had seen through Lu Hao's sinister intentions and had wanted him to stay away. "Is this your idea or His Majesty's?" Shui Rui asked. He thought it was the latter. If the emperor was kept in the dark and didn't say anything, Shui Lingnan could use this to bring down Lu Hao. But he chose to swallow his anger. He had no choice but to swallow it. Hearing Shui Rui's words, Shui Lingnan's expression finally changed. He put one hand on his knee and looked at him, saying, "You are really old." Every time he saw Shui Rui, it would cause him to recall his eldest son that had died young. Sometimes he felt hatred and sometimes he felt pity. He hated the child before him for causing his beloved son to lose his life, yet it was a pity that this extraordinarily quick-witted child wasn't the bloodline of his Shui clan in the end. "Tell me, how did you know it was Prince Ning?" Shui Rui said, "Grandfather, you forgot. My sworn sister Yu Shu is good at the art of death." Shui Lingnan's eyes sharpened. He sat up straight. Can the art of death really determine life and death? He thought it was just an exaggeration. But the 10th princess's death was so strange. It was unbelievable that it could be calculated so clearly. "Yes, but I can only make a rough guess. For example, I can know that the 10th princess committed suicide that day, that she had an affair with someone before she died, and that the villain behind her is a man named Xiaoji. Then I can deduce and investigate." Shui Rui didn't want Shui Lingnan to think that Yu Shu's art of death was omnipotent. Shui Lingnan could see that Shui Rui didn't hide anything from him. Disappointment flashed in his eyes. After the incident, this old man used some spies to investigate the 10th princess's contacts. I found that she had an affair with Kong Qi of the Hall of Civil Splendor. And that Kong Qi was under the control of Prince Ning because of a murder case. So I knew the real murderer. Shui Lingnan's eyes flashed with coldness. He told Shui Rui this secret. Shui Rui sighed in his heart. Sure enough, the older the ginger, the spicier. The Shui family had 100 years of foundation and deep roots in the court. Even he didn't know how many cards Shui Lingnan had in his hands. But I didn't make it public. I waited for His Majesty to punish me. It was important to know that the princess had an affair with an official. A prince murdered his sister. How could such a scandal be exposed? Sure enough, His Majesty didn't intend to pursue this matter. The emperor didn't investigate further, nor did he punish the Shui family. At that time, people thought that the Shui family was favored by His Majesty. But who knew that it was His Majesty who had a guilty conscience? Is that why grandfather tolerated it? What else could he do? Shui Lingnan sneered. A ruler is a ruler and an official is an official. If a ruler wants an official to die, an official has to obey. Not to mention he had to take the blame for a prince. Shui Rui's face was as dark as water. Even though he had guessed the truth, it still sent shivers down his spine. Everyone envied the power of the Shui family, but who would have thought that even though Shui Lingnan looked good on the surface, there were also times when his teeth were knocked out and he had to swallow his blood. Everyone was like an ant under the feet of the emperor. Shui Lingnan looked at his expression. His heart was slightly at ease. Even though Shui Rui wasn't his grandson, this child valued friendship and loyalty. Just based on the Shui family's kindness in raising him, he wouldn't do anything to betray the Shui family in the future. On the contrary, if Shui Rui had other thoughts, he wouldn't tolerate him. Ning Wang is shrewd and is a person who can achieve great things. His Majesty favors him. It's clear that he has the intention of making the crown prince. But Ning Wang is narrow-minded. The day he ascends to the throne will be the day my Shui family is destroyed. Shui Lingnan lowered his voice. His eyes were shrewd. Because of this, he must stop His Majesty from making him the crown prince. Shui Rui deeply agreed. If the Shui family wanted to survive, Ning Wang couldn't be the ruler. It's just that Prince Jing isn't familiar with his thoughts. He's still young and inexperienced. Compared to the fully fledged Ning Wang, it will be difficult to change His Majesty's mind. Hearing this, Shui Lingnan restrained his expression. He lightly patted his knee and said to him, "This old man knows what to do. With this old man here, it's not your turn to worry." "Yes. Alright, this matter ends here. Don't mention it again." Shui Lingnan changed the topic. "As for your marriage with the Count, don't try to use the 10th princess's death as an excuse. Give me a valid reason and I may reconsider. Otherwise, the marriage with the Count is not negotiable." Shui Rui struggled for a moment. He sighed inwardly and stood up. He said softly, "Grandfather may think it funny, but grandson already has someone he likes. In this life, I will not marry anyone else but her." Shui Lingnan narrowed his eyes with a whoosh, his voice a little cold. "The person you're talking about, is she your so-called sworn sister?" Shui Rui's face froze. He looked at him with some astonishment and said, "Grandfather, why would you think so? The person I'm talking about is not my sworn sister." Shui Lingnan stared at him and said, "Then who is it?" Shui Rui lowered his eyes. He hesitated for a moment before carefully saying, "It's Prince of Dongjing Jiang Huaying's sister, Princess Jiang Mia." This time it was Shui Lingnan's turn to be shocked. "Prince of Dongjing? What's going on? When did you know Jiang Huaying's sister?" "I've been away from the capital for 3 years. 2 of those years were spent in the northeast. That's how I got to know Prince of Dongjing. Jiang Mia is the daughter of a general. She is straightforward and doesn't care about trifles. In addition, she once saved my life. I will not let her down." Chapter 578. Shui Lingnan listened to Shui Rui's words and looked at him suspiciously. "If so, why didn't you tell me earlier?" The Jiang family was a conferred king with a different surname. They had been rooted in the northeast for generations and were a tyrant of a region. That Jiang Huaying was young, but he had already accumulated many military achievements. He had no children, but he had a younger sister who he doted on a lot. If Shui Rui had really taken a fancy to this princess, then Shui Lingnan felt that it was worth pondering over. Shui Rui said, "As soon as I returned to the capital, I went to the Supreme Court to take up my post. Only then did I realize that the emperor's heart is unpredictable. His Majesty is afraid of Prince Dongjing's influence. If the Shui family and the Jiang family were to unite by marriage, we would be suspected. So I did not confess to you. I have missed this chance and will regret it for the rest of my life. I will not be stubborn for love again." Shui Lingnan listened to his last sentence and looked at him meaningfully. "You know how to look at the big picture. I don't have to worry." After saying that, he paused for a moment before continuing, "Let this old man think about this carefully before making a decision. You can leave first." Shui Rui hesitated. "What about the marriage with the Earl?" Shui Lingnan said, "Since you don't like it, I will not force you." Shui Rui breathed a sigh of relief and left with a relaxed expression. After he left, Suli came in and stood next to Shui Lingnan. He lowered his head and asked, "Does Master believe eldest young Master's words?" "I believe, why wouldn't I believe?" Shui Lingnan clasped his hands together in front of his chest, closed his eyes and said lazily, "If Cheng Bai can pull the Jiang family onto the boat, the chances of success in the future will be even greater. However, it is still too early now, we need to delay." Suli said, "What about the Earl? I heard that the Rui family's young lady made a fool of herself at the hibiscus banquet. How can a woman with a big mouth and no cleavage be a match for my child?" Suli hesitated. "What if eldest young master did not mention the Jiang princess today? I'll find a good marriage partner for him as soon as possible. If the count's mansion doesn't work, there's still the minister's mansion or the grand preceptor's mansion. Otherwise I'll choose from the 12 prefectures." "So, Master suspects that young master has taken a liking to the female fortune-teller from Yang, so you're testing him?" Shui Lingnan narrowed his eyes. "Ali, you talk too much today." Suli was stunned and smiled bitterly in his heart. Eldest young master was brought up by old master, so wasn't he also a child who was raised by old master? Shui Lingnan didn't pursue the matter. He tapped his fingers on his knees and said slowly, "This female fortune-teller seems to have appeared out of nowhere. She has no background, yet she's able to survive until today. It's a little strange." Suli said, "Eldest young masters, Wang Jilu, is surrounded by an iron bucket. There is no way to investigate the inside. If master is worried, I will send someone to keep an eye on her." "There's no need." Shui Lingnan raised his hand and waved it off. "With her strength alone, even if she's different, she won't be able to cause much trouble. Yes. Shui Rui left the upper room and passed through the corridors. His expression became serious. He had just confirmed two things from Shui Lingnan. First, the emperor had the intention of establishing Ning Wang. Second, Shui Lingnan was suspicious of the relationship between him and Yu Shu. The emperor had been on the throne for 14 years, and the Eastern Palace had existed in name only. As more imperial princes came of age, there was a storm brewing in the court. Many people dreamed of the merit of ascending the throne and had already lined up. Ning Wang had framed the 10th princess. The emperor knew that he had committed a great crime but still protected him. It was clear how much weight Ning Wang held in his heart. If he didn't see him as the successor, how could he tolerate him framing his daughter and wronging an official? Shui Rui had a premonition that Ning Wang would most likely escape another calamity in this assassination case of the imperial envoy. However, what worried him wasn't the imperial decree, but Shui Lingnan's attention to Yu Shu. I don't know if grandfather knows about the matter of the Great and Disaster and the Fate Breaker. Shui Rui guessed. He thought that Shui Lingnan wouldn't be completely ignorant, but he wouldn't know too much. At least, the identity of Yu Shu as the Fate Breaker was still a secret. Even so, Shui Rui didn't dare take the risk of exposing his relationship with Yu Shu to Shui Lingnan. Shui Rui knew very well that Shui Lingnan had suppressed the pain of losing his son and raised him. It wasn't for the sake of familial affection, but because the Shui family needed him, the eldest grandson. The Shui family didn't have many people. In his generation, the two branches added together only had him and Shui Guangxu. The other sisters were mostly concubines and weren't of much use. And it was precisely this kind of high official family that placed more importance on marriage. It wasn't that Shui Rui was belittling himself. In Shui Lingnan's eyes, his greatest use was probably to rope in a solid in-laws for the Shui family to form an alliance. In the future they would support Lu Tan to ascend the throne and replace Lu Hao. Shui Rui had a self-deprecating expression. If Shui Lingnan discovered that he and Yu Shu were in love with each other, he had plenty of ways to force him to submit. But Yu Shu had the emperor's spies by her side. If Shui Lingnan interfered, the other side would notice. As long as the Great and Disaster existed, his relationship with Yu Shu would never see the light of day. Therefore he could only use a smokescreen to confuse Shui Lingnan and delay the marriage. Wait until I find out my background and parents, then I'll decide whether to stay or leave. He did stay in the northeast for 2 years, and he did get to know the Prince of Dongjing and his sister. As for Jiang Mie, a figure flashed across Shui Rui's mind, and he instantly felt terrible. If she knew that I used her as a cover, she might whip me again. How could Shui Lingnan know that the Prince of Dongjing, Jiang Huaying's precious sister, the lively and lovely little princess he mentioned, was actually a witch? Shui Rui's birthday banquet was held in the evening. The first to arrive was Feng Zhaomiao. This guy sneaked out of the barracks and climbed over the wall to enter the Shui residence in the middle of the afternoon. He didn't dare to go through the main gate, for fear that he would be seen and heard by his father, the general, who would arrest him. After dark, Ruilin, Qi Mingxiu, and Lu Tan also arrived one after another, followed by a few colleagues of the Supreme Court, 2 of the same rank as Shui Rui, and a few of his subordinates. They all came to congratulate him. Soon 4 tables were filled. The banquet was set under the veranda by the full moon pond. A round table could accommodate 8 people. Because Lu Tan and Shui Rui were sitting together, no one dared to act rashly. Only the Ruilin siblings, Qi Mingxiu and Feng Zhaomiao, were at the same table. There are still 2 empty seats. Who hasn't arrived yet? Qi Mingxiu pointed to the empty seat on the left of Shui Rui. Lotus Room hasn't arrived yet. Feng Zhaomiao stood up and stretched his neck to look around. Shui Rui also wondered why Yu Shu hadn't arrived yet. She said she would come with little 6 of the Xian family. Maybe she was delayed on the road. Sitting next to Ruilin, Rui Zizhu and Shui Rui were facing each other across the 2 empty seats. They secretly looked at each other. Then let's wait before we start the banquet. Lu Tan smiled slightly. It's not good to leave the lady behind and enjoy ourselves first. Hearing this, everyone was puzzled. Feng Zhaomiao, who was confused, asked, "What lady are you talking about, Your Highness? Are you talking about Lotus Room? Don't you know?" Lu Tan looked around at everyone's puzzled eyes. He turned to look at Shui Rui and said, "Cousin's sworn sister, Yu Xuanzi, is now a celestial commissioner. Fang Jing is a 5th-ranked imperial woman." As soon as this was said, everyone was surprised and immediately asked Shui Rui. Shui Rui glanced at them and calmly replied to everyone. At this time, Yu Shu and Xen Lu also arrived at the gate of the Shui family. "It's really bad luck to meet a spirit on the road. Xan Lu got off the carriage and did not forget to pat his shoulder and head. He suspiciously said to Yu Shu, "It's cousin Shue's birthday. We bumped into a dead person and then came to see him. Is it inauspicious?" Yu Shu smiled and said, "What are you afraid of? I'm here." Saying this, she shook the slender gift box in her hand. She showed the contents to Xan Lu on the road. Xan Lu immediately clapped his hands and laughed. "Yes, you brought this treasure." Asking the driver to wait on the opposite street, Yu Shu and Xan Lu took 2 steps towards the door. A figure flashed behind them. In a few steps he walked in front of them and climbed the steps of the door. Xan Lu tugged at Yu Shu. "Quick, look." Yu Shu looked up and saw that the person was wearing a cloak that covered half of his body. He even wore a dusty bamboo hat on a hot summer day, hiding his head and face. It was very strange. The person was stopped in front of the door by the guard. He stopped and threw something over. "I want to see Shui Rui. Quickly go and inform him. If you delay my business you will suffer." Listening to the voice, it was a woman. "Tsk, what a fierce woman," Xan Lu whispered to Yu Shu. The person in the bamboo hat seemed to hear it. He suddenly turned his head and looked at the 2 people under the steps. He put his hand on his waist and said, "What did you say? Do you dare to say it again?" Xan Lu was not afraid of trouble. He was about to answer, but he was stopped by Yu Shu. Yu Shu smiled and said to the woman in the bamboo hat, "My sister is young and offended you. Miss, please don't blame her." Hearing this, the man glared at Yu Shu, snorted coldly and turned around, ignoring the 2 of them. Xan Lu looked at Yu Shu unconvinced. His small eyes were asking, "Why are you afraid of her?" Yu Shu rolled her eyes. "Are you stupid? Don't you see that there is a long whip wrapped around her waist? I can't stop it when it hits you." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.